Hey guys, tonight we travel back to a time long before the polished documentaries and romanticized epics. We're going to the heart of medieval Africa, not as a king or a queen, but as an ordinary person. Imagine the heat, a thick, living thing that presses down on you from a sky the color of bleached bone. Hear the drone of insects, a constant, unchanging symphony that underscores every moment of your life. You are surrounded by a world that is both breathtakingly beautiful and breathtakingly indifferent to your survival. In fact, let's be honest, the odds are stacked so heavily against you from your very first breath, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see how far these stories travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your existence begins not with a gentle welcome, but with a violent, terrifying gamble. You are being born. There is no sterile room, no reassuring beep of a machine, no doctor in clean scrubs. Your first sensory experience of the world is the earthen floor of a circular hut pressed against your mother's back. The air is thick with the smell of wood smoke, sweat, and something metallic and coppery, blood. Your mother is kneeling, gripping a wooden post driven into the ground, her grunts lost in the rhythmic chanting of the village midwife, an old woman whose hands are as tough as cured leather. She is not unkind, but her face is a mask of grim concentration. She has seen too many births end in sorrow to offer easy reassurances. The very air you are about to breathe is filled with potential death. The thatched roof above you is home to spiders and scorpions, and the smoke that's supposed to keep the mosquitoes at bay only works so well. You are a fragile, helpless thing, emerging into a world that sees you as, at best, a potential asset and, at worst, another mouth to feed in a world of scarcity. Finally, with a last, desperate push, you are out. You are here. But the danger has just begun. The midwife, your grandmother perhaps, doesn't gently swaddle you in a soft blanket. She might rub you down with ash or fine sand to clean you. Her movements practical and efficient. Your first bath might be in a calabash gourd filled with cool, slightly murky water drawn from the village well or a nearby stream. Water that teems with invisible life, none of it friendly. There is no concept of germ theory here. An infection, that tiny, unseen invader, is a far greater threat than any lion lurking in the tall grass. Your first few hours are a blur of muted light filtering through the single doorway of the hut. Your world is your mother's exhausted, protective embrace. But outside that fragile circle of warmth, the world waits. A mainstream historical fact, a grim one, is that across most of the pre-modern world, your chances of reaching your 5th birthday were, frankly, about 50-50. In some regions and during hard times, they were even worse. For every 2 children born, one would be taken by disease, by malnutrition, by an accident, or by a predator. You are not yet a full person in the eyes of your community. You are a potential, a fragile maybe. Many cultures in this era wouldn't even give you a proper name for days, weeks, or even years, waiting to see if you were a visitor who intended to stay. To name you too soon was to invite the heartbreak of loss, to give substance to something that could so easily vanish like morning mist. You are tiny and vulnerable. As you lie there, you might feel a strange, gritty paste being smeared on your skin. This could be any number of things, a concoction of herbs and clay meant to ward off evil spirits or biting insects. Here's a quirky tidbit for you. Some concoctions used in various parts of ancient and medieval Africa for skin protection or medicinal purposes were creative. While the famous story of crocodile dung being used as a contraceptive comes from ancient Egypt, the principle of using whatever is at hand from the natural world was universal. Your protective paste might contain shea butter, which is lovely, but it might also contain less appealing ingredients, things a modern parent would have a full-blown panic attack over. The goal isn't cosmetic, it's survival, and the line between medicine and magic is non-existent. As dusk falls, the sounds outside the hut change. The familiar noises of village life, the pounding of grain, the chatter of your kin, the bleating of goats, fade away. They are replaced by the sounds of the night. The whoop of a hyena, the saw-like rasp of a leopard's call, the unnerving chittering of things you cannot see. Your hut is made of mud, wood, and thatch. It is strong, but it is not impenetrable. A snake seeking warmth could easily find its way inside. A larger predator, driven by hunger, might test the flimsy door. Your security is not a guarantee. It is a collective effort. The village fire must be kept burning, and someone, always, must be on watch. You feel the gnawing emptiness of hunger for the first time. Your mother, weakened by childbirth and likely undernourished herself, does her best. But her milk might be slow to come, or not enough. There is no formula, no baby food aisle at the local super-emperor's market. If your mother cannot feed you, your chances plummet dramatically. A wet nurse, another woman in the village who has recently given birth, might be a possibility, but that depends on complex social ties and whether she has enough to spare. Your survival is tied directly to your mother's survival and the generosity of her community. Let's talk about those invisible killers, the ones that don't have teeth or claws. Tetanus, from the very soil you were born on, could enter your body through the cut umbilical cord. Dysentery from the water. Malaria from the bite of a mosquito that slips through the smoke-filled air. Measles, smallpox, diseases that would sweep through a community like a wildfire, are especially cruel to the very young. You have no immunity, no vaccinations, no antibiotics. Your only defense is the fragile gift of your mother's antibodies, passed through her milk, and sheer, dumb luck. This is where we encounter a significant open scholarly debate. Historians still argue whether the primary driver of this horrific infant mortality was endemic disease or periodic famine. Was it the constant, grinding pressure of pathogens in the environment, or was it the catastrophic impact of a failed harvest? In truth, the two were a terrifying partnership. A year of poor rains meant a meager harvest. A meager harvest meant weakened bodies. Weakened bodies were a welcome mat for disease. A child who might have survived about a fever in a good year would be swiftly carried away in a lean one. It's a chicken and egg problem of immense and tragic proportions. Which monster got you first was often just a matter of timing. Imagine your first week of life. You are a bundle of instincts. You cry, you sleep, you eat, if you can. You are utterly dependent. Your family watches you, their hopes mingled with a deep, pragmatic fatalism. They celebrate your arrival, of course. A child is a blessing, a continuation of the lineage, a future pair of hands to work the fields, a future warrior to defend a village. But their joy is tempered by experience. They have lost children before. Your aunts, your grandmother, your mother herself. Their lives are marked by these small, invisible graves. You are not a citizen of a grand, unified Africa. That is a modern concept. You are a member of a specific lineage, a specific village, a specific clan. Your world, for now, is the 30-foot diameter of your family's hut. But even in this tiny space, the cruel realities of the wider world are present. A draft that carries the whine of a mosquito is a harbinger of fever. A crackle in the thatch above could be a scorpion shifting its position. The quality of the grain porridge your mother eats directly impacts the quality of the milk you receive. Her anxieties, her fears, her physical exhaustion are transferred to you in subtle ways. To the tension in her arms, the scent of her sweat. Your birth is a testament not to romance, but to resilience. The fact that anyone survived this period is a miracle of human toughness. Your mother is not a delicate flower. She is a survivor. The midwife is not a gentle nurse. She is a pragmatist who has seen it all. Your father is not just a proud parent. He is a guardian, a provider, and a worrier who knows that your tiny life is a flickering candle in a world full of wind. You are born into a state of perpetual crisis management. That is the baseline. There is no golden age of peaceful, simple living to look back on. There is only the struggle, the gamble, and the faint, persistent glimmer of hope that you, against all odds, might just make it. Somehow, against the odds, you've made it. You survived the perilous lottery of birth and the gauntlet of your first few years. The fevers came, but they broke. The hungry seasons left you with a hollow ache in your belly, but they didn't claim you. You are now a child, perhaps 7 or 8 years old, and your brief period of being a precious, fragile maybe is officially over. Now, you are an asset. Now, you must work. There is no concept of a carefree childhood here. No long, lazy summers spent in imaginative play. Play exists, of course, in snatched moments. But your primary purpose, your entire waking life, is about to be consumed by the relentless, back-breaking grind of subsistence farming. Your day begins before the sun. The first hint of gray light on the horizon is your signal to stir. You tumble from your sleeping mat on the hut's floor, the cool, packed earth a familiar feeling against your skin. There's no breakfast buffet waiting. Your first meal of the day is likely leftovers from the night before. A cold, stiff lump of sorghum or millet porridge, maybe with a bit of watery sauce if you're lucky. It's not about enjoyment. It's fuel. It's what you need to face the sun, your eternal overseer. You follow your parents and older siblings out of the village, joining a silent, trudging procession towards the fields. The land that sustains you is not a lush, green paradise. It is hard, often unforgiving earth. Depending on where you live, the semi-arid Sahel, the Guinea savanna, or the forest clearings of the Congo Basin, your reality will differ, but the central truth remains the same. This land does not give up its bounty easily. Let's imagine you in the savannah. The fields are a patchwork of cleared land wrested from the tenacious scrubland. Your first job of the day is scaring birds. It sounds simple, almost quaint, but it's a deadly serious task. You, along with the other children, are the village scarecrows. You have a sling or a clapper made of wood, and for hours, you patrol the edges of the millet fields, screaming, waving, and launching stones to drive away the swarms of small, ravenous birds that can decimate a crop in an afternoon. It's boring, it's hot, and your attention cannot wander. A few minutes of distraction could mean the loss of a dozen meals. Your family's survival might literally depend on how well you, an 8-year-old, can shout at a flock of birds. As you get older and stronger, your tasks become more demanding. You are handed your first real tool. It is not a finely crafted steel implement. It is likely a heavy, clumsy-looking hoe, perhaps with a fire-hardened wooden blade. Or if your village is fortunate, a short, broad iron one forged by the local blacksmith. Iron is precious, and this tool is one of the family's most valuable possessions. You learn to use it by watching, by mimicking the rhythmic swing of your mother and father. Your first attempts are clumsy. You hack at the soil, the impact jarring your arms and shoulders. Blisters form on your soft hands, then break, then bleed, then harden into calluses. The calluses are your diploma. They prove you are learning. The work is governed by the seasons. After the first rains, the ground is soft enough to be broken. This is the hardest work of all. For weeks, from sunrise to sunset, you will be bent at the waist, your back screaming in protest, hacking at the soil to prepare it for planting. The sun beats down on you relentlessly. There is no sunscreen, save for a coating of dust and sweat. Remember that crocodile dung concoction we joked about? You might be wishing for something, anything, to shield you from this heat. You learn to read the sun's position in the sky to tell the time, to know when you might get a brief rest in the shade of a lone baobab tree for a mouthful of water and another lump of cold porridge. A key historical fact here is the sheer diversity of African agriculture. This wasn't a continent of one-size-fits-all farming. Your life in the savannah, cultivating grains like sorghum and millet, is completely different from the life of someone in the forest zone to the south. There, they might be clearing patches of forest with axes and controlled burns, a technique called swidden agriculture, to plant yams and cassava. Their main tool would be a digging stick, and their main challenge would be the relentless encroachment of the forest, which always seeks to reclaim its territory. The crops, the tools, the very rhythm of the year are different, but the sweat and the struggle are universal. There's a fascinating and long-running scholarly debate on this very topic. For centuries, colonial historians and administrators viewed these agricultural practices as primitive or inefficient. They saw the simple tools and the shifting fields as signs of a backward people. But modern scholars and archaeobotanists have flipped that narrative. They argue that what you are doing is actually a highly sophisticated adaptation to your specific environment. Historians still argue whether the lack of the European-style plow was a technological deficit or a brilliant ecological choice. Plowing deeply can lead to rapid soil erosion and nutrient loss, especially in the fragile tropical soils you are working. Your method of minimal tillage, of mixing different crops in the same field, a practice called intercropping, is actually far more sustainable. You are not stupidly hacking at the ground. You are engaging in a complex, inherited science of survival, even if you couldn't articulate it that way. You just know it's what works. Let's not get too romantic about it, though. It's still brutal. As the plants grow, the work changes. Now you must weed. On your hands and knees, for endless hours, you crawl between the rows of crops, pulling out the stubborn, competing plants that want to steal the precious water and nutrients from your food. Your fingernails are permanently packed with dirt. Your knees are raw. And all the while, you are exposed. A snake hiding in the weeds, a scorpion under a rock, the constant, maddening buzz of insects. Here's a quirky tidbit about your diet. The staple food is bland. It's porridge. Day in, day out. You dream of meat, a rare luxury usually reserved for festivals or a lucky hunt. But you learn to supplement your diet with what the land offers. You become an expert forger. You know which insects are edible. Roasted termites are a crunchy, protein-rich treat, not a dare for a reality show. You know which wild leaves can be boiled to make a sauce, which roots can be dug up when the grain stores are low. These are called famine foods, the things you only eat when desperation sets in. The fact that you know how to find and prepare them is a grim testament to how often desperation visits. The harvest is the climax of your year, a period of frantic, joyous activity. But it is not a party. You work faster and harder than ever, racing against the weather. An unseasonable storm could flatten the stalks. A fire could wipe out everything. You cook the stalks with a small knife, bundle them, and carry the heavy loads back to the village on your head. Your neck and back muscles burn with a familiar fire. The grain is then threshed, beaten to separate the edible part from the husk, and winnowed, tossed in the air so the wind can carry the lighter chaff away. Every single grain is precious. You would spend an hour on your knees picking up a handful of spilled millet. That handful is dinner. After the harvest, the grain is stored in a granary, a special hut often built on stilts to protect it from moisture and rodents. This is the village's bank account, its lifeblood, and it is never, ever enough. The harvest has to last until the next one. You learn the cold calculus of hunger. The portions in the months after the harvest are generous. But as the year wears on, they shrink. Your mother becomes an expert at stretching the supply, her face etched with a constant, low-grade worry. By the time the next planting season approaches, you are living on rations that barely keep you going. This annual cycle of plenty and scarcity is the fundamental rhythm of your life. It is the engine that drives everything: your work, your fears, your brief, fleeting joys. You are not working to get rich. You are not working for a promotion or a corner office. You are working every single day so that you and your family do not starve to death. That's it. That's the entire game. The sun finally dips below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery streaks of orange and purple. The heat of the day begins to recede, replaced by a cool evening breeze. You trudge back from the fields, your body a single, unified ache, the wooden handle of your hoe worn smooth by your calloused hands. You are tired to the bone, but your day is not over. The physical labor may be done, but now you must enter the second great arena of your life, a place in many ways more treacherous than the sun-baked fields, the village. You are about to engage in the intricate, exhausting, and deadly serious business of navigating village politics. Your village is small, perhaps only a few hundred people, and you know every single one of them. You know their faces, their families, their histories, and their secrets. And they know yours. There is no anonymity here. There is no closing your front door and shutting out the world. Your hut, with its single open doorway, is less a private residence and more a porous membrane through which the life of the village constantly flows. Every argument, every laugh, every cry is semi-public. The concept of minding your own business hasn't been invented yet. Your business is everyone's business, and theirs is yours. It's the original open-plan living space, and the social dynamics make a modern-day homeowners association look like a laid-back book club. Your identity is not your own. You are not simply you. You are the son or daughter of your father, the grandchild of your grandmother, a member of your specific lineage. Your name ties you to a web of obligations, alliances, and inherited rivalries that stretch back generations. When you walk through the village, people don't just see a young person covered in dust, they see a representative of a clan. Your every action reflects not just on you, but on your entire family. If you're lazy, it is said that your whole family is lazy. If you are disrespectful, it is a stain on your kin. This is a crushing weight, a constant performance where you are judged not for who you are, but for what you represent. The center of political life is not a grand hall, but often just the space under the largest tree in the village, a giant acacia or baobab whose branches have shaded generations of debate. Here, the elders gather. These are the old men, and sometimes senior women, who form the village council. They're the government, the judiciary, and the living library of your people's customs and laws. A mainstream historical fact about your world is that many societies, particularly in West and Central Africa, were stateless. This doesn't mean they were chaotic. It means they were governed not by kings, presidents, or a formal bureaucracy, but by these intricate systems of kinship. Power was decentralized, managed through family ties, councils like this one, in secret societies. Justice and decisions were hammered out through endless discussion. As a young person, your role in these discussions is simple. You sit at the periphery, in the dust, and you keep your mouth shut. You listen. You learn. To speak out of turn would be an act of shocking arrogance. Your opinion is not sought, nor is it welcome. Power here is tied directly to age. The older you are, the more you have seen, the more harvest you have witnessed, like the one you just completed, the more children you have raised, the closer you are to the ancestors. And the closer you are to the ancestors, the more wisdom you are believed to possess. This leads us to an ongoing scholarly debate. Historians still argue whether this system, known as gerontocracy, was a benign form of governance based on collective wisdom or a rigid tyranny of the old. From your perspective, sitting in the dust with an aching back, it feels a lot more like the latter. You see the elders debating the allocation of newly cleared farmland or the appropriate bride price for a young woman. Their decisions will shape your entire life, where you will work, whom you might marry, what your obligations will be. Yet you have absolutely no say in the matter. You watch as arguments are won not by logic, but by seniority, by the eloquent quoting of proverbs, or by a subtle threat to withdraw the support of a powerful family. It's a slow, frustrating process, and you often wish they would just get on with it so you can eat. Social harmony is the ultimate goal. In a small community where everyone depends on everyone else for survival, open conflict is disastrous. Therefore, countless rules, both spoken and unspoken, exist to keep the peace. You must show proper deference to your elders, greeting them in a specific way, perhaps by crouching slightly and not looking them directly in the eye. You have a complex set of obligations to your relatives. You must help your uncle repair his hut, share your food with your widowed aunt, and contribute to the bride price of your older cousin. To refuse is unthinkable. It would sever the bonds that keep you safe, making you an outcast. And here we find a truly quirky and brilliant social mechanism. In many cultures of this region, you would have a joking relationship with certain relatives. For instance, you might have a formal, deeply respectful relationship with your mother's brother, but a boisterous, insult-hurling relationship with your cross-cousins. You are not only allowed but expected to publicly mock them, and you can tease them about their big feet, their terrible singing, their laziness, things that would start a blood feud if said to anyone else. It sounds bizarre, but it's an ingenious social safety valve. It allows frustrations and minor aggressions to be vented in a structured, harmless way, preventing them from festering into real conflict. It's like a medieval roast battle, but with the very serious purpose of maintaining societal cohesion. But what happens when the rules are broken in a more serious way? Suppose someone accuses you of theft. There is no police force to investigate, no court with bewigged judges. The case is brought before the Council of Elders. Witnesses are heard, but evidence is often scarce. The proceedings are deeply personal. The accuser is not a stranger, it's your neighbor, the one whose children you play with. The judges are your great-uncles and the fathers of your friends. The pressure is immense. Your family's honor is on the line. You plead your innocence, your voice trembling. But your word against your neighbor's word is not enough. The village needs certainty. The harmony has been broken and must be restored. This is when things can turn truly terrifying, leading to trials by ordeal that we will explore later. For now, the threat of it hangs in the air, a powerful incentive to follow the rules. Even generosity is political. When your family has a successful hunt, you cannot simply feast by yourselves. The meat must be shared, distributed according to a precise social map. The elders get the best cuts, the hunter's immediate family the next, then the extended kin, and so on. To hoard the kill would be a grave social sin, an act of supreme arrogance. It would mark you as someone who puts themselves above the community. And in this world, to be outside the community is to be an easy prey for slavers, for hunger, for the lurking dangers of the bush. So you give, even when your own stomach rumbles, because generosity is an investment in your own security. You learn to navigate this world with a quiet tongue and sharp eyes. You learn to read the subtle shifts in mood around the evening fire. You notice which two women have stopped speaking to each other, a sign of a brewing dispute. You see the way an elder subtly favors one young man over another, a clue to future alliances. You master the art of non-committal agreement. You become a social chameleon, adapting your behavior to fit the situation and the company. This is not dishonesty, it is a vital survival skill, as important as knowing how to swing a hoe or find water. Your life is a tightrope walk, and the fall is into social oblivion. The careful, intricate dance of village life you've learned to navigate is predicated on one enormous assumption, that the rains will come. Your entire social structure, your calendar, your very religion is built around the annual miracle of water falling from the sky. The Council of Elders, for all their wisdom and proverbs, are powerless against the clouds. All those delicate rules of sharing and obligation you mastered in Section 3. They work when there's something to share. But now, that assumption is beginning to crumble, and with it, the very foundations of your world. It starts slowly, almost imperceptibly. The rainy season is late. At first, it's a subject of casual complaint around the evening fire. The elders skim the horizon each dusk, their faces impassive, but you can see the worry tightening the skin around their eyes. The air, which should be thick with humidity and the smell of impending storms, remains crisp and dry. The sky, instead of turning a promising shade of bruised purple, is a vast, empty, metallic blue, day after day. The sun seems to get hotter, more personal in its malevolence. Weeks turn into a month. The planting time has come and gone, but the ground is as hard as fired pottery. The seeds remain in their clay pots. To plant them now would be to throw them away. A nervous tension settles over the village. The easy laughter and chatter are gone, replaced by hushed, anxious conversations. You watch your parents' faces, and for the first time, you see not just worry, but a flicker of real fear. Remember those granaries from Section 2, the ones filled with the bounty of the harvest? They are no longer a symbol of security, they are a ticking clock. The elders gather under the great tree, and this time the debate is grim. Rations are introduced. The daily portion of grain, once enough to fill your belly, is cut in half. Then by half again. You start to feel a constant, dull ache in your stomach. It's a feeling you've known during the lean times before a harvest, but this is different. This is a hunger backed by a terrifying uncertainty. There is no harvest coming. The landscape begins to change. The greens and browns of the savanna fade to a uniform, dusty yellow. The earth cracks open in deep, thirsty fissures. The nearby stream where you used to fetch water shrinks to a series of muddy pools, then disappears altogether, leaving a baked, serpentine scar on the land. The daily trip for water becomes a long, arduous trek to a distant, deeper well, and the water you bring back is brackish and bitter. The cattle grow thin, their ribs showing like the rungs of a ladder. Their lowing becomes weak and pitiful. This is the reality of drought in places like the African Sahel, a well-documented and recurring historical nightmare. Great kingdoms and empires, far more powerful than your tiny village, have risen and fallen on the strength of the annual rains. A prolonged drought, lasting several years, wasn't just a hardship. It was an extinction-level event for a society, capable of wiping out entire peoples or forcing them into massive, desperate migrations. You are living through the beginning of such an event. As the hunger deepens, desperation forces a change in behavior. All those famine foods you knew about, the bitter roots, the insects, the tough leaves, are no longer a last resort. They are the main course. You spend your days not in the fields, but scouring the parched landscape for anything remotely edible. You dig for hours to unearth a single, starchy tuber. You shake tree branches, hoping a few dried pods might fall. The frantic energy of the harvest has been replaced by the slow, methodical, exhausting labor of foraging for scraps. This is when the village turns to the supernatural. Your physical efforts are failing, so you must appeal to a higher power. This brings us to a rather quirky and deadly serious tidbit: the rituals of rainmaking. The village elders might order a specific sacrifice. Perhaps the last healthy goat must be offered to the sky god or the earth spirit. Or maybe there's a specific dance, a set of movements and chants passed down through generations that must be performed perfectly to appease the ancestors and coax the rain from them. There might even be a designated rainmaker, a person believed to have a special connection to the elements. At first, this person is treated with immense reverence. But as the drought wears on, that reverence sours into suspicion, then anger. If the rituals fail, it must be someone's fault. Did the rainmaker perform the ceremony incorrectly? Does he harbor some secret impurity that offends the spirits? You might witness the village, your friends and neighbors, turn on this individual, shaming them, blaming them for the collective suffering. It's a terrifying example of how fear seeks a target. The social fabric, once so tightly woven, begins to unravel. The rules of sharing and kinship fray under the immense strain. Remember how families were supposed to share a successful hunt? Now, if someone manages to trap a small animal, they do so in secret, and the meal is eaten in the dead of night inside their hut. The smell of roasting meat a source of agonizing jealousy for those who can smell it downwind. The village's open-door policy on gossip is replaced by a closed-mouth policy on where you bury the last yam. Trust evaporates. Neighbors eye each other with suspicion. Fights break out over a mouthful of water or a handful of scavenged nuts. The gerontocracy of the elders weakens, their wisdom proving useless against an empty sky. What good is a proverb when your child is crying from hunger? You are weak. Your body is consuming itself. Your limbs feel heavy, your thoughts slow and fuzzy. You see the effects of severe malnutrition all around you. The swollen bellies and reddish hair on the youngest children. The vacant, hollowed-out eyes of the adults. People stop visiting each other. The village becomes a collection of isolated, starving households. The silence is the worst part. There's no pounding of grain, no children playing, just the whisper of the hot, dusty wind. Now, your family and the village elders face the ultimate, terrible choice. This is the subject of another great scholarly debate. What is the primary human response to catastrophic famine? Historians still argue whether communities typically tried to hunker down, enduring the crisis in their ancestral home, or whether the main strategy was migration. The answer is likely both, and both are horrific. Some will argue to stay. This is your home. The graves of your ancestors are here. To leave is to abandon your entire identity, to become no one, adrift in a hostile world. They cling to the hope that the rains will return tomorrow or the next day. They will guard the last of the seed grain, eating the husks and chaff to survive, hoping to plant it when the miracle finally happens. Others, likely the younger, more desperate members of the community, will argue for leaving. They say that to stay is to choose a slow, certain death. They speak of legends of other places, over the hills or across the dry riverbed, where there might be water, where another kingdom might offer refuge or servitude. This would mean abandoning the old and the weak, packing what little you can carry, and walking out into a wasteland with no guarantee of survival. It's a choice between a slow death and a fast one, a choice that will split families and shatter your community forever. You lie on your mat, listening to the hushed, desperate arguments of your parents, the ache in your belly a constant, terrifying reminder that your life hangs on their decision. Your world has been bleached and starved by the relentless sun. The gnawing hunger from the drought we just endured has left you, and everyone you know weakened, a village of listless, skeletal figures clinging to a fragile hope. Your body, stripped of its reserves, is a fortress with its gates thrown wide open. And now the invisible armies of disease come marching in. Surviving the famine was one thing. Surviving the sickness that follows in its wake is another cruel joke entirely, and the punchline is the medicine you'll be given. It begins, as it so often does, with a mosquito. A tiny, insignificant whine in the night, a brief sting you barely notice. But this isn't just any mosquito. This one carries a passenger. A few days later, you wake up feeling strange. It starts with a headache, a dull throb behind your eyes. Then a chill sets in, a deep, bone-rattling cold that makes your teeth chatter uncontrollably, even under the suffocating heat of the midday sun. You pull your thin wrap tighter around your shaking frame, but the cold is inside you. Then, just as suddenly, the cold vanishes, replaced by a surging, volcanic heat. A fever grips you, so intense that the world dissolves into a blurry, wavering mirage. Sweat pours from you, drenching your sleeping mat. Your mother presses a damp cloth to your forehead, her face a mask of that familiar, terrified helplessness you've seen so often. You are delirious, tossing and turning, mumbling words that make no sense. You are in the grips of malaria. This is a mainstream historical fact that has shaped the very DNA of the people on this continent. Malaria, or something very much like it, has been a constant, lethal presence in much of Africa for thousands of years. It has been such a powerful force of natural selection that it led to the evolution of genetic defenses, like the sickle cell trait. This is a brutal bargain. Inheriting one copy of the gene can give you significant protection from dying of malaria, but inheriting two copies gives you a debilitating and often fatal blood disorder. Your very biology is a testament to the long and bloody war your ancestors have fought against this disease. You, lying delirious in your hut, are just the latest soldier on the front line. There is no doctor to call. There is the healer, the Nana, the Nyanga, or whatever title they hold in your specific culture. This individual is a combination of pharmacist, priest, and psychologist. They're summoned. It might be an old man with eyes that seem to look through you, or a woman adorned with rattling gourds and bags of mysterious contents. Their first job is diagnosis, and it has nothing to do with parasites or mosquitoes. The question is not what is making you sick, but who. Did your family offend an ancestor? Did a neighbor, jealous of that last handful of grain your father managed to hide, pay someone to place a curse on you? Have you accidentally trespassed on the territory of a vengeful nature spirit? The healer's diagnostic method might involve throwing bones, reading patterns in the dust, or interpreting the twitching of a sacrificed chicken's leg. To be fair, given the circumstances, consulting a chicken seems about as effective as all the prayers for rain you witnessed. The cause is determined. You have been targeted by witchcraft, your spirit weakened by a malicious force. Now for the cure. It will be a multi-pronged attack on this spiritual ailment. First, the healer will likely prepare a potion. You are forced to drink a foul-smelling, incredibly bitter concoction brewed from a dozen different roots, barks, and leaves. This is where we encounter a fascinating scholarly debate. Historians still argue whether these traditional remedies were pure superstition or a form of legitimate, if misunderstood, pharmacology. Were these healers just charlatans? Or did they possess a deep, inherited knowledge of the local flora? It's entirely possible that some of these plants contained active compounds that genuinely did reduce fever, fight infection, or ease pain. Aspirin comes from willow bark, after all. But for every potentially helpful ingredient, there were likely several others that were either useless or actively harmful, thrown in for their magical significance rather than any medicinal property. As you choke down the bitter brew, you have no way of knowing if you are being poisoned or saved. Next comes the physical treatment. A poultice might be applied to your head or chest. It could be a warm mash of leaves, or it could be something far less pleasant, like a paste of animal dung and clay. The goal is to draw the sickness, the evil spirit, out of your body. If the headache is the main problem, you might be subjected to a truly quirky, and terrifying fringe practice known as trepanation. While more commonly associated with other parts of the world, evidence for it exists in ancient Africa too. The healer, using a sharp piece of flint or obsidian, would scrape or drill a small hole in your skull. This wasn't for brain surgery. It was to release the malevolent spirit or pressure that was believed to be causing your agony. Lying there, in a fever dream, the feeling of someone scraping away at your skull to let a demon out is a level of horror that is hard to comprehend. While this is happening, the ritualistic part of the healing is in full swing. The healer might dance around you, chanting, shaking a rattle, creating a hypnotic, rhythmic noise designed to frighten the evil spirit away. Smoke from burning, pungent herbs fills the small hut, making your eyes water and your lungs burn. The smoke isn't for aromatherapy, it's to purify the space, to create a hostile environment for the magical entity possessing you. An amulet, perhaps a small leather pouch containing a specific claw, a strange seed, or a piece of carved wood, is tied around your neck or wrist. Its power is meant to shield you from further spiritual attack. The line between medicine and magic is not blurry, it is completely non-existent. You might also be isolated, a form of quarantine, but not for reasons of hygiene. It would be to prevent the witchcraft affecting you from spreading to others. This means you are alone, suffering through the cycles of fever and chills, with only the occasional visit from your mother to give you water and another dose of the terrifying herbal sludge. And malaria is just one of many possibilities on the menu. A drink of that slightly murky water from the dwindling well could give you dysentery, a gut-wrenching illness that would drain the very life out of you, leaving you fatally dehydrated. A small cut on your foot from a sharp rock in the field could become infected, swelling up, turning red and hot, leading to sepsis that poisons your entire system. Without antibiotics, a simple scratch could be a death sentence. There are worms, parasites that live in your gut, sapping your strength. There are skin diseases, respiratory infections, and of course, the ever-present threat of epidemic diseases like smallpox or measles sweeping through your weakened village and wiping out a third of the population in a matter of weeks. Your survival depends on a cocktail of factors: the strength of your own immune system, the roll of the dice on whether the healer's potion contained more helpful ingredients than harmful ones, and the pure, dumb luck of the universe. If you do recover, slowly, over many weeks, no one will credit your immune system. The credit will go to the healer's powerful magic, the efficacy of the amulet, and the successful exorcism of the curse. The healer's reputation will grow, and the belief in witchcraft as the source of all suffering will be reinforced. If you die, well, the witchcraft was simply too strong, the curse too profound. The system is conveniently self-perpetuating. As you lie there, drifting in and out of consciousness, you are a passive player in a drama that has nothing to do with your actual biology, a grim testament to a world where the cruelest joke is being offered a cure that is just as dangerous as the disease. You have survived the fever, the healer's foul-tasting brew, the terrifying amulet around your neck, or more likely, your own stubborn constitution has pulled you back from the brink. But you are a ghost of your former self. The drought left you thin, and the disease hollowed you out. You move slowly, your muscles weak, your senses still dull. You are vulnerable, isolated. And in the world you inhabit, vulnerability is an open invitation to the next great horror, a fear more constant and personal than drought or disease, the fear of being stolen. This isn't a fear of strange men and sailing ships arriving on a distant coast. That chapter of cruelty is yet to be written on a grand scale. This is a local, intimate, and arguably more insidious terror. The people who might enslave you look like you. They speak a dialect of your language. They might even worship similar gods. They are the people from the village over the hill, the ones with whom your own village has a long-standing feud over grazing rights or a stolen bride. The weakness of your community, ravaged by famine and sickness, has not gone unnoticed. Your village is ripe for the picking. The attack comes when you least expect it. Perhaps you've wandered just a little too far from the village perimeter, gathering firewood. Your mind, still slow from your illness, is focused on the brittle branches at your feet. You don't hear the rustle in the tall grass until it's too late. There's no formal declaration of war, no battle cry, just a sudden, violent explosion of movement. Hands grab you, strong and rough. A cloth is stuffed in your mouth before you can scream. Your arms are wrenched behind your back and tied with a coarse rope that bites into your skin. It's over in seconds. You are dragged away, your feet stumbling over the familiar terrain that is no longer your home. You catch a glimpse of smoke rising from your village, a diversionary fire, and hear faint, panic shouts, but you are already being swallowed by the bush. You are now a captive. Your old life, your identity as the child of your parents, a member of your lineage, has been violently amputated. All those intricate social rules you learned, all the obligations and relationships from Section 3, are now utterly meaningless. You are no one. You are nothing but a piece of walking property. Your journey is a blur of terror and exhaustion. You are tied to other captives, a miserable, shuffling line of stolen humanity. To speak is to be beaten. To slow down is to be beaten. You drink from stagnant pools and eat scraps they throw at you. At night, you are tied to a tree, exposed to the same insects and night sounds that once seemed so familiar, but now sound menacing and alien. Your new owners aren't interested in your well-being beyond keeping you alive enough to be useful. This isn't a business transaction. It's a violent act of predation. After days of walking, you arrive at their village. It looks hauntingly similar to your own. Circular huts, a large tree in the center, the smell of wood smoke. But it is a world away. You are paraded before the village elders, the same kind of old men who once governed your own life. But here, their faces are cold and appraising. They look at your teeth, feel the muscles in your arms and legs. You are being assessed like livestock. This is the grim reality of slavery as it existed within Africa for centuries. This brings us to a crucial historical fact. Slavery was a pre-existing institution, but it was complex and varied. In many societies, it wasn't the permanent, race-based chattel slavery that would later define the transatlantic trade. An enslaved person was often a casualty of war, a criminal, or an outcast. Your fate could follow many paths. You might be sacrificed to a god, sold on to another group, or, most likely, integrated into your new society at the very bottom rung. You are given to a family as a domestic slave. Your new job title is involuntary, lifelong intern, and the benefits package includes sleeping on the floor and eating whatever is left after the family, their children, and even their dogs have eaten. Your days, once filled with the familiar labor of your own family's fields, are now filled with the endless, thankless tasks of someone else's. You grind their grain, fetch their water, carry their goods to market, and endure their casual cruelty. Your name is taken from you. You are called slave, or given some generic, demeaning name. This is a deliberate tool to strip you of your past and your humanity. Here is where we can touch upon a quirky, related concept: pawnship. In some cases, a person wasn't captured but was pawned. If a family fell into a desperate debt, perhaps during that very famine that weakened you, they might give one of their children to the creditor as a living piece of collateral. That child, the pawn, would work for the creditor's family until the debt was repaid. While technically not a slave, as they could eventually be redeemed, the day-to-day reality for that child was often indistinguishable from yours. Looking around at the other servants in your new household, you wouldn't be able to tell who was a captive and who was a pawn. The distinction is academic when you're the one scrubbing the pots. The psychological toll is immense. You are surrounded by people but are utterly alone. You have no kin, no one to defend you, no one to share a quiet moment of understanding with. You learn to make yourself small, to be invisible, to anticipate the moods of your masters to avoid a beating. You live in a state of perpetual, low-grade fear. The slightest mistake, spilling water, burning the porridge, could result in a cuff on the head or a lashing. The most dangerous thing you can do is show defiance. This entire experience fuels a major scholarly debate. Historians still argue whether these indigenous forms of bondage were relatively mild systems of social incorporation or fundamentally brutal and exploitative. Some scholars, often from an earlier era, romanticized it, suggesting that slaves were treated like one of the family. From your perspective, as you nurse the bruises from your master's son who struck you for being too slow, that argument would sound like a bitter, cynical lie. Others argue that these systems were the bedrock of power and wealth for many African elites, and were just as cruel and dehumanizing as any other form of slavery anywhere in the world. The loss of freedom, the constant threat of violence, and the stripping of your identity is a profound trauma, regardless of the economic system it serves. Escape is a persistent, dangerous dream. But where would you go? Your village may have been destroyed, or your family may have been killed or captured along with you. Even if you made it back, would they accept you? Sometimes, a person who had been enslaved was seen as tainted, their honor lost. And the journey itself is filled with peril. If caught, the punishment would be horrific: a severe beating, branding, or even the cutting of a tendon in your leg to ensure you never run again. So you endure. You learn the new language, the new customs, the new lines you cannot cross. Perhaps, over many years, your situation might change. In some societies, it was possible for a slave to earn their freedom or be granted it for loyal service. It was sometimes possible to marry, though your choice of partner would be severely limited. Your children might even be born free, not inheriting your status. This was a key difference from later American chattel slavery. But these are distant, shimmering possibilities, not guarantees. For now, your reality is the endless grind of servitude, the loss of your past, and the constant, gnawing fear that you could be sold again at any moment, passed along like a worn-out tool to an even crueler master, farther and farther away from the home you can now only visit in your dreams. Years have passed since the violent afternoon you were stolen. The memory of your old life has faded into a dull, persistent ache, like a poorly healed bone. You are no longer the new captive, the frightened outsider. You have grown into your servitude, your body hardened by labor, your spirit calloused by necessity. You understand the language and the rhythms of this new village, your home that is not your home. You have survived. What survival in this world means being useful, and as you've grown stronger, your masters have found a new use for you. The very violence that brought you here is now a part of your life. But this time, you will be on the other side of the spear. The tensions have been simmering for months. The memory of that great drought from years ago is long, and the resources it depleted have never fully recovered. Your adopted village needs more land, more cattle, more grain. And the village a day's walk to the east is said to have all three. The elders have debated. The diviners have been consulted. The war leader, a bull of a man with a chest covered in scar tissue, has made his pronouncements. Your village is going to war. As an enslaved person, you have no say, but you will have a role. You will not be a glorious warrior. You are seen as untrustworthy, expendable. You are part of the support crew, the logistics division of this low-tech military operation. Your job is to be a porter, a pack mule. You are laden with heavy baskets of dried food, gourds of water, and extra bundles of spears and arrows. Or perhaps you are assigned as a shield bearer to one of the lesser warriors, your job being to carry his heavy cowhide shield until the fighting starts, and then to stay out of the way. You are human infrastructure, and your life is valued somewhere below that of a seasoned warrior's favorite spear. The night before the raid is thick with ritual. This is not a spontaneous brawl. It is a planned, spiritually sanctioned undertaking. This is where you might witness a quirky and vital part of the process, the application of war medicine. The healer, the same one who might treat fevers, now prepares a different kind of concoction. The warriors might drink a special brew intended to fill them with courage, or have a gritty, magical paste rubbed into cuts made on their arms and chests. This dawa, this war medicine, is believed to make them invisible to the enemy, or even invulnerable, able to turn away a spear with the power of their will. You watch this ceremony from the shadows, knowing that no such magic is being wasted on you. Your only protection is your wits and the desperate hope that you can run fast enough. The war party sets out in the pre-dawn gloom, a silent, gray column of men snaking through the bush. The mood is not one of patriotic fervor. It's a tense, grim focus. These men are not fighting for an abstract concept like a flag or a nation. They are fighting for survival and for profit. And this brings us to a central historical fact of warfare in your world. The primary objective is not to kill the enemy or seize territory for its own sake. The goal is to capture assets. And the most valuable asset is people. The cattle they hope to steal are a bonus. The grain they aim to plunder is a secondary objective. The real prize is human beings, who can be incorporated into the village as slaves, just like you were. You are marching to create more people like yourself. The irony is so bitter it almost makes you want to laugh, but you learned long ago to swallow that kind of emotion. The fighting, when it comes, is nothing like the grand, sweeping battles you might imagine. There are no cavalry charges, no intricate formations. It is sudden, chaotic, and brutally intimate. Your party ambushes the enemy village at dawn, the time of greatest confusion. The war leader lets out a piercing cry, and your side surges forward. Your job is to stay back with the other porters and shield bearers, your heart hammering against your ribs, trying to make sense of the screaming, the clash of wood on wood, the sickening thud of a club meeting flesh. This is where you find yourself in the middle of a long-running scholarly debate. Historians still argue whether this kind of warfare was largely ritualistic, a sort of violent sport with established rules and low casualties, designed more to display prowess than to inflict real damage. Some point to the use of less lethal weapons like clubs, and the emphasis on capturing rather than killing is evidence for this. But from your vantage point, crouched behind a bush, watching a man you know get a spear through his throat, it feels anything but ritualistic. You see men you share meals with fighting for their lives against men whose faces they can clearly see. They are screaming insults at each other, calling out names. This is personal. You know that if your side loses, you will either be killed on the spot or find yourself the property of a new master, your miserable life taking another step down. The academic debate about lethality feels very distant when a stray arrow hisses past your ear. The raid is successful. The enemy warriors, taken by surprise, are quickly overwhelmed. The fighting dies down, replaced by a different kind of horror, the rounding up of the spoils. The warriors, high on adrenaline and victory, move through the huts, dragging out crying children and terrified women. Remember the hands that grabbed you? Now you are watching those same kinds of hands grabbing others. The war leader directs the collection of cattle and the seizure of grain from the granaries. Huts are set on fire, not to destroy the village completely, but to add to the terror and confusion, to break the will of the survivors. You and the other porters are called forward. Your job now is to help manage the loot. You are handed a rope and forced to tie the wrists of a captive, a young woman who looks at you with a mixture of terror and utter contempt. You see your own past reflected in her eyes. You avoid her gaze, your hands fumbling with the knots, your mind a numb buzz of shame and self-loathing. You are now the instrument of the cruelty you survived. You load the stolen grain onto your back and help drive the captured, lowing cattle. You are part of the machine. The retreat is a forced march, just as yours was. The captives, the new yous, are prodded and pushed along. The war party is anxious, eager to get back to the safety of their own territory before any of the escaped enemy warriors can rally a counterattack. The mood is celebratory for the warriors, a grim, silent march for the captives, and for you, something horribly in between. You are on the winning side, which means you get to live. You get a slightly larger portion of food tonight. But the victory tastes like ash in your mouth. Back in your village, the celebration is wild. There is feasting, drinking of millet beer, and retelling of heroic deeds, most of them wildly exaggerated. The captured cattle are added to the village herd. The grain replenishes your dwindling stores. And the new captives are brought before the elders to be assessed and distributed among the powerful families. You watch the process, a spectator to your own history. You see a young boy, no older than 10, separated from his mother. You see the despair in her eyes, a despair you know intimately. You go back to your master's compound, unload the grain and receive your reward, a nod of approval and the leftovers from the feast. You have done your job. You have proven your utility. You are, for now, a valuable piece of property. You lie on your mat, the sounds of the victory celebration ringing in your ears, and you try not to think about the face of the woman you tied up, a face that will now haunt your sleep along with the ghosts of your own stolen family. The victory feast from your last raid is a fading memory, but the spoils, the extra grain, the new captives, the fattened cattle, have given your adopted village a swagger, a dangerous confidence. Your war leader, the man whose shield you may have carried, walks with his chest puffed out a little further. Your village is the local bully, the biggest fish in a very small pond. The problem with being the biggest fish is that you attract the attention of much larger fishermen. The small, violent world you've come to know is about to collide with a force you can barely comprehend. Your village is about to be swallowed. It starts not with an army, but with a single man. He walks into the village one afternoon, alone. He isn't from any of the neighboring communities you raid or trade with. He is tall and lean, and he carries a long staff topped with a carved animal, a lion or a crocodile, that is not a symbol of any local clan. He wears fabrics dyed in colors you've rarely seen and carries himself with an unnerving, placid arrogance. This is a quirky but deadly serious figure in your world, the imperial messenger. He is the voice of a distant king or emperor, a Munsa, an Oba, an Askia, a name you may have only heard in whispers. This messenger's personal safety is paramount. He is a walking flag. Harming him would be like spitting in the eye of the empire itself, an act of suicidal defiance. He doesn't ask, he informs. He speaks to your village elders, the powerful gerontocrats and the proud war leader, as if they were unruly children. He tells them that this land, your land, now belongs to his master. He explains that your village will henceforth be expected to send a portion of its harvest, a quota of its young men for military service, and a tribute of ivory or cattle to a provincial governor you've never met, in a town you've never heard of. In exchange, you are offered protection. It's the classic protection racket, just on a geopolitical scale. The messenger then turns and walks away, leaving a stunned, furious silence in his wake. The debate that night under the great tree is the most intense you have ever witnessed. Your war leader, the hero of the last raid, is apoplectic. He argues for defiance. Who is this distant king? Have his warriors proven themselves in battle against your own? The elders are more cautious. They have heard stories, travelers' tales of a great power consuming everything in its path, of armies that move like locusts across the land. They are afraid. For the first time, you see genuine fear crack the hardened faces of the men who own you. Their pride wins out. The messenger's demands are ignored. It is the single greatest mistake your village will ever make. A few weeks later, you are out in the fields, engaged in the familiar, back-breaking labor, when you feel at first a low, rhythmic vibration in the earth. Then you hear it, a sound like distant thunder, but the sky is clear. Someone scales the tallest tree on the edge of the village, and what he sees makes him cry out in a voice strangled by panic. An army. Not a raiding party of 50 men like the one you joined, but a column of hundreds, maybe thousands, marching in disciplined ranks. There are men on horseback, a terrifying sight if you've never seen it. A warrior who seems to be a 10-foot-tall centaur. They carry large shields bearing the same symbol as the messenger's staff, and the sun glints off hundreds of well-made spear points. The village erupts into pure panic. Your war leader, for all his bluster, can only muster a few dozen warriors. They are brave, the same men who seemed invincible when raiding a weaker neighbor, but now they look small and pathetic. Remember them applying their special dawa to make them invincible? It seems a lot less convincing when faced with a cavalry charge. The battle, if you can even call it that, is a massacre. The horsemen flank and scatter your village's warriors while organized infantry advances, a wall of shields and spears. It's over in less than an hour. You, along with the other non-combatants and slaves, huddle in your huts, listening to the sounds of slaughter. When silence falls, you are dragged out into the center of the village. The ground is littered with the bodies of men you knew, including the proud war leader. The imperial soldiers, professionals who do this for a living, round everyone up. The conquest is complete. Now, a new authority asserts itself. A man who is clearly the commander, draped in finer cloth, flanked by guards, addresses the surviving elders. He doesn't shout. He speaks calmly, which is somehow more terrifying. He explains the new reality. Because you resisted, the price has gone up. The initial tribute demanded by the messenger is now doubled. He points to a line of your village's young men and women, including some of the captives from your last raid, and they are chained together. They are part of the price for defiance, to be taken back to the capital as slaves for the emperor. Your own status is uncertain. You are property, and the ownership of your village has just changed hands. You might be left here, or you might be part of the loot. This is a mainstream historical process that built the great empires of medieval Africa, from Ghana and Mali in the west to the Swahili city-states in the east. They weren't built by gentle persuasion. They grew by conquering and absorbing smaller groups like yours. Often, they would leave the local power structure in place. Your surviving village elders would now rule on behalf of the emperor. They would become his local tax collectors. In exchange for their cooperation, they get to keep some of their old authority and perhaps even call on imperial power to crush their own local rivals. It's a devil's bargain, but it's the only one on the table. Your small, self-contained world has been violently integrated into a vast, indifferent machine. And this brings up a huge scholarly debate. Historians still argue whether these empires were highly centralized states or loose collections of tribute-paying vassals. From your position on the absolute fringe of this new empire, it feels very much like the latter. The emperor is a mythic figure you will never see. The capital is a place you can't imagine. Your new government is the same old village council, but now they answer to a regional governor, who answers to a minister, who answers to the emperor. You have simply acquired several new layers of masters, all of whom are invisible and all of whom will demand a piece of your labor. Life changes. The threat of being raided by the village to the east is gone, replaced by the certainty of being taxed by the empire. The soldiers leave, replaced by a single imperial agent, a resident, who stays behind to ensure the tribute is collected. The old rivalries and alliances of your tiny corner of the savannah are now irrelevant, subsumed into the grand, impersonal politics of the state. You are no longer a member of a village that matters. You are an insignificant peasant in province number 7 of the glorious empire of who cares. It's a promotion in scale, but a demotion in every other sense. You have traded the familiar, intimate cruelty of local warfare for the cold, bureaucratic cruelty of the state. It's not at all clear that this is an upgrade. The bodies of your village's warriors have been buried, and the smoke-blackened scars on the huts are a constant reminder of your recent, brutal education in imperial politics. The conquering army has moved on, leaving behind that single, watchful agent of the state and a heavy silence. The protection you were promised has arrived. You are now protected from raiding by your neighbors because you all belong to the same master. You are also protected from the Empire's army, on the condition that you do exactly what it says. It's a remarkably circular business model. Now, the true cost of this protection becomes clear, not in blood, but in sweat and grain. You are about to learn the grinding, oppressive mathematics of tribute and tax. Life returns to a semblance of normality, but it's a new, poisoned kind of normal. You still wake before the sun, you still trudge to the fields, you still swing that heavy, familiar hoe. The struggle to coax enough food from the hard earth, the central drama of your life from Section 2, is still your reality. But now, you are not just working for yourself, your family, or even your master. You are working for a distant, unseen emperor, a man you will never meet, who lives in a city of unimaginable splendor built entirely on the contents of your granary. The imperial tax is not a polite request mailed to you once a year. It is a physical presence. At the end of the harvest, the emperor's agent, accompanied by your own village elders, who have now become reluctant cogs in the imperial machine, goes from family to family. They don't just ask for a share, they measure. They assess the yield of every household, and a set portion is designated for the emperor. There is no negotiation. There are no deductions for a difficult year or a sick child. The quota is the quota. You watch as the grain your family toiled for, the grain that represents your buffer against the next drought, is scooped into the emperor's sacks and carried away. The portion they leave you is calculated to be just enough to survive on, to be strong enough to work the fields and produce another tribute next year. You are being farmed, just as you farm the land. Your family's granary, once a source of pride and security, now looks depressingly empty just weeks after the harvest. The lean season, that hungry stretch of time before the next harvest, used to begin months from now. Under imperial rule, it begins immediately. This system of taxation in kind was the absolute bedrock of the great medieval African empires. While they are famous for their control of the gold and salt trade, the vast majority of their revenue, the food that fed their armies and the wealth that built their capitals, came from the systematic extortion of agricultural surplus from millions of peasants just like you. The grand processions of Mansa Musa, dripping with gold, were paid for by the aching backs and empty stomachs of his countless, nameless subjects. The tribute demanded might not just be grain. The emperor has diverse tastes. Your village might be required to produce a certain number of hides, pots of honey, or baskets of dried fish. This is where you might encounter some truly quirky forms of currency and taxation. Let's say you live in a region where cotton grows. The emperor might demand that part of your tribute be paid in woven cloth. This isn't just any cloth. It must be of a specific length and quality, a standardized unit that actually functions as currency in the empire's markets. Suddenly, your mother and sisters, on top of all their farm work and domestic chores, must spend their evenings spinning and weaving, their fingers raw, not to make clothes for the family, but to create tax cloth to satisfy the imperial demand. The pressure is immense. A flawed piece of cloth could be rejected, leaving you in debt to the most powerful creditor imaginable. And what if you can't pay? What if your harvest was poor, or a fire destroyed your tribute cloth? The empire has procedures for this. The agent and the elders will come back. First, they will take your tools. Then, your cooking pots. Then, your goats. If the debt is still not settled, they will take one of your family members. Your brother might be conscripted into the army, a life sentence of marching and fighting for the emperor's ambitions. Or your sister might be taken as a domestic slave for the regional governor. The empire is unsentimental. It always collects. This constant, looming threat of default adds a thick layer of anxiety to your already difficult existence. Your status as a slave, ironically, offers a strange, thin layer of insulation. You are your master's property. The tribute is his problem. But you are the one who has to produce the surplus he needs to pay it. His anxiety becomes your workload. When he is squeezed by the tax collector, he squeezes you, demanding you work longer, harder, faster. The lash on your back might be wielded by your master, but the force behind it originates in the distant capital. This entire oppressive system fuels a major scholarly debate. Historians still argue whether imperial rule was a net positive or a net negative for remote villages like yours. The pro-empire argument is that by imposing peace, a pax imperialis, and connecting you to a larger economic network, the empire provided stability and opportunities that outweighed the burden of taxation. You were, in theory, safer from raids and could trade your meager surplus in larger, more stable markets. The counter-argument, which feels much more real from your perspective, is that this was a purely extractive relationship. The peace was simply the quiet of submission, and the trade opportunities were just more efficient ways for the wealth of the periphery to be funneled to the core. Any benefit you saw was an accidental trickle-down from a system designed to enrich a tiny, gilded elite at your expense. Lying on your mat, your stomach aching with a familiar hunger, you'd probably vote for the purely extractive theory. The presence of the empire changes the very fabric of your village. The elders, once respected arbiters of custom, are now seen with a measure of suspicion. They are the ones who have to enforce the emperor's will. The delicate social harmony you once knew, the one based on kinship and mutual obligation, is corrupted by this new power dynamic. People start to view each other not as kin, but as competitors for scarce resources. Did your neighbor deliberately underreport his harvest to the elders? Is the tax assessor showing favoritism to his own relatives? The seeds of resentment sprout in the depleted soil of your community. The cruelty of it all is its impersonality. When your village was raided by your neighbors, the violence was personal. You knew your attackers. Now, you are being crushed by a spreadsheet you cannot see, by the demands of a bureaucrat you will never know. You labor to fill the belly of a soldier hundreds of miles away, to adorn the wife of a governor, to build a palace for an emperor who considers you less than the dust on his sandals. You have been absorbed, digested, and turned into fuel for a machine you cannot control, a machine whose only purpose is to grow larger and hungrier. The emperor's tax has been paid, leaving your master's granary and your stomach emptier than ever. The logic of the new imperial world is sinking in. Subsistence is no longer enough. To survive, to pay the tribute and have something left over, your master must engage in commerce. He needs something to trade, something of value to take to the regional markets that are now, in theory, safe to travel to. And since he is far too important to carry it himself, he needs you. Your life as a farm laborer is about to be upgraded to a life as a beast of burden. You're joining a trade caravan. You are not a merchant. You will not be haggling over prices or making a profit. You are human transport. Your role in this grand commercial enterprise is to carry a heavy, awkward load on your head or your back for weeks on end. It might be a stack of salt blocks, painstakingly mined and shipped from a distant desert, which your master traded a cow for. It could be a giant basket of pungent dried fish, or heavy ivory tusks that dig into your shoulder with every step. Whatever it is more valuable than you are. If you fall and break the merchandise, the beating will be severe. If you fall and break your leg, you will be left behind. The math is simple and brutal. The caravan assembles at dawn. It's a motley collection of merchants, guards, and dozens of porters like yourself. The whole operation is under the command of a caravan leader, the Madugu, a seasoned professional who knows the routes, the watering holes, and the customs of the peoples whose lands you will cross. This is a quirky but vital feature of the road. The Madugu is the absolute authority. He is the captain, judge, and navigator. His word is law, and his experience is what everyone's life depends on. He negotiates the tolls. Yes, there are still tolls, with the local chiefs whose territories you pass through. Then imperial peace doesn't mean travel is free. It just means the local lord will probably take your payment instead of just taking your head. Probably. The journey begins. You fall into a line, a human centipede shuffling through the savannah. The first few days are defined by the sheer, crushing weight of your load. Your neck muscles scream, your spine feels compressed, and a dull, throbbing pain settles deep in your shoulders. You learn the porter's shuffle, a way of walking that minimizes jarring movements. You learn to balance the load so perfectly that it becomes a part of you, a monstrous, parasitic twin you are forced to carry. The scenery is monotonous. The same acacia trees, the same tall grass, the same unforgiving sun. Your world shrinks to the heels of the person in front of you and the rhythm of your own breathing. The days are long, plodding marches, broken only by a short midday rest and the setting of camp in the evening. There is no privacy, no comfort. You sleep on the hard ground, huddled with the other porters for warmth and some small measure of security. And you need that security because the road is not safe. The imperial peace you heard about back in Section 8 is a lovely concept in the capital, but out here on the wild frontiers, it's thin and full of holes. You are a slow-moving treasure chest, a tempting target for bandits. Every night, guards are posted, and a large bonfire is kept roaring to scare off predators of both the four-legged and two-legged variety. Every strange sound in the darkness, a snapping twig, a distant cry sends a jolt of fear through the camp. You lie there, trying to sleep, wondering if this is the night you'll be woken by the screams of a raid, forced to either fight with a makeshift club or be captured by a new set of masters. This reality fuels a scholarly debate. Historians still argue about the primary motivation behind this kind of trade. Was it a form of early capitalism, with merchants acting as rational economic agents purely in search of profit? Or was it more deeply embedded in social and political life, a way to forge alliances, gain prestige, and secure exotic goods for gift-giving to enhance one's status? Watching your master fret over his salt blocks, you suspect it's a bit of both. He wants the cowrie shells the salt will bring him, yes, but he also wants the prestige of being a big man who can afford to trade, a man who can gift a piece of salt to an elder or acquire a bit of foreign cloth for his wife. From your perspective, carrying the 60-pound load, the academic distinction is meaningless. Your back hurts either way. The dangers are not all human. You cross rivers where crocodiles lurk, their forms indistinguishable from logs floating near the bank. You walk through forests where leopards hunt, and you pray you don't get separated from the group. But the most dangerous predator is, as always, the smallest. The tsetse fly, carrier of sleeping sickness, can fell a man or a beast with its bite. A drink from the wrong water source can lead to a fatal bout of dysentery. A fever can strike you down miles from any help. If you get sick on the road, you are a liability. The caravan will rest for a day, maybe two. If you are not well enough to keep up after that, you are left to the mercy of the wilderness. Your master will not grieve for you. He will grieve for the abandoned salt. After weeks of this grinding toil, you finally arrive at the market town. It is the biggest settlement you have ever seen, a chaotic, sprawling, dizzying explosion of humanity. The air is thick with 1,000 new smells: roasting meat, exotic spices, dust, sweat, and dung. The noise is a constant roar of bartering voices in a dozen different languages, the bleating of goats, the hammering of blacksmiths. People are everywhere, dressed in fabrics and jewelry you couldn't have imagined. It's overwhelming and terrifying. You are not here to enjoy the sights. You follow your master to a specific quarter of the market where the salt traders gather. You unload your cargo, your body sighing in relief as the immense weight is finally lifted. Your job now is to guard the goods while your master engages in the slow, ritualized process of haggling, which can take days. You watch as he trades his salt not for gold, but perhaps for cola nuts, a bitter, caffeine-rich stimulant from the forest regions that is highly prized in the savannah, or for iron bars, or for those precious cowrie shells that the emperor demands as tax. Once the transaction is done, there is a brief respite. Perhaps your master is feeling generous and gives you a small piece of roasted meat or allows you to drink your fill from a safe well. Then, the process is reversed. A new cargo, the cola nuts or iron bars, is loaded onto your back. And the whole miserable journey begins again, this time heading home. You trudge out of the chaotic, vibrant market town, leaving its color and life behind, and melt back into the monotonous, dangerous landscape, once again just a man carrying a heavy thing. Your only hope to survive the road and return to the familiar misery you call home. The caravan is packing up to leave the chaotic market town, loading the new goods for the long, miserable trek home. But you are not going with them. Perhaps your master found it more profitable to sell you along with his salt blocks. Perhaps you were traded for a bolt of fine cloth or a few bags of cola nuts. Or perhaps you simply got sick, and your master, cutting his losses, abandoned you. Whatever the reason, your connection to your old life, as grim as it was, is severed. You are now alone, a single, worthless piece of human driftwood washed up on the shores of the grimiest, most terrifying, and most vibrant place you have ever imagined, a medieval African city. This isn't your village, magnified 100 times. It is a different species of settlement altogether. The first thing that hits you is the smell. It's an overwhelming assault on your nostrils, a thick, complex stew of scents you can't untangle. There's the aroma of grilling meat and spices from food stalls, the sharp tang of animal dung from the livestock market, the metallic scent of the blacksmith's forge, the cloying sweetness of perfumes worn by the wealthy, and weaving through it all, the ever-present, stomach-turning stench of human waste and rotting garbage. The city's sanitation department is a dedicated flock of vultures perched on the rooftops and a pack of mangy dogs that slinks through the alleyways. They're brutally efficient, but overworked. The second thing that hits you is the noise. It is a constant, deafening roar that never ceases, from the first call to prayer at dawn to the last drunken argument late at night. The din is a symphony of 1,000 sources, the ceaseless chatter of 12 languages, the rhythmic hammering of craftsmen, the shouts of merchants advertising their wares, the braying of donkeys, the crying of children, and the murmur of Quranic schools reciting their verses. After a life spent in the relative quiet of the savannah, the sheer volume of sound feels like a physical pressure against your skull. You are shoved into the flow of a street so narrow that you can touch the buildings on both sides. There is no open space, just a writhing, jostling river of humanity. You are swept along with wealthy merchants in flowing robes, desert nomads with indigo-stained skin, soldiers from the imperial garrison, veiled women, and hundreds of slaves and servants like yourself, their faces bearing the same numb, weary expression as your own. This is the great city of Jan, or Kano, or perhaps Gao, a vital organ of the empire, a hub of commerce and power. A mainstream historical fact is that these cities were architectural and cultural marvels, famous for their monumental mud brick mosques and universities. But you are not seeing the marvels. You are seeing the mud, the grime, and the gutters. Your new master is an artisan, perhaps a dyer, a leather worker, or a weaver. He bought you for a pittance and immediately puts you to work in his cramped workshop in a specific quarter of the city. Here's a quirky and interesting feature of your new life. The city is highly organized into craft guilds. The tanners all work and live in one smelly neighborhood, the blacksmiths in another, the potters in a third. These guilds are powerful. They control who is allowed to practice their trade, they set prices, and they look after their own members. Your master is part of this network. You are not. You are just a tool he uses to increase his production. Your work is mind-numbingly repetitive. If your master is a dyer, you might spend 12 hours a day plunging heavy bolts of cloth into large, stinking vats of indigo dye, your hands and arms permanently stained a deep blue. If he's a leather worker, you might be scraping hides, a foul and physically exhausting task. You work. You eat a meager meal of grain, and you collapse on a mat in a corner of the workshop, only to wake up and do it all again. It is a different kind of labor from the farm work you knew, but it is just as brutal, and there is no changing of the seasons to break the monotony. This city is a place of dizzying contrasts. From your master's workshop, you can see the towering minaret of the great mosque, a testament to the wealth and piety of the city's elite. You see merchants carried through the streets on litters, their clothes so fine they seem to shimmer. You see the compounds of the ridiculously wealthy, hidden behind high mud brick walls, from which you can hear music and laughter. And then you see the beggars, their bodies twisted by disease or injury, and the hordes of orphaned children who survive like rats in the alleyways. The gap between the haves and have-nots, which was a simple line in your village, is a vast, unbridgeable chasm here. This stark reality fuels an important scholarly debate. Historians still argue about the fundamental identity of these urban centers. Were they truly African cities, growing organically from indigenous roots? Or were they cosmopolitan islands, creations of the trans-Saharan trade, more culturally aligned with North Africa and the wider Islamic world than with the savanna hinterlands from which you came? The truth is, it feels profoundly alien to you. The language of the merchants, the religion practiced so visibly by the elite, the very food people eat, it's all a world away from your village customs. You feel like a foreigner, even though you are only a few hundred miles from where you were born. As a slave, you are at the absolute bottom of this complex urban society. You have no rights, no kin, no protection beyond your value as your master's property. The city is full of dangers. The crowded conditions are a perfect breeding ground for disease. A fire, once started in the cramped quarters, can sweep through a neighborhood in minutes. And there is crime. While the city guard might patrol the merchant quarters, no one cares about a slave getting robbed or beaten in a back alley. You learn to be wary, to stick to the main streets when sent on an errand, to keep your eyes down and make yourself as unnoticeable as possible. Sometimes your master sends you to the market to buy food. This is your only glimpse into the wider life of the city. You see things that astonish you. Stalls selling dates and figs from oases far to the north. Traders haggling over blocks of green glass, shimmering beads, and copper ingots. You see scholars, their heads wrapped in white turbans, arguing about theology, surrounded by students. It is a world of immense energy and wealth, but you are looking at it through a thick wall of glass. It is not for you. You are here to buy the cheapest grain and get back to the workshop before your master notices you are gone for too long. You have traded the open sky of the savannah for a sliver of sky between dirty, crowded buildings. You've traded the fear of lions for the fear of a knife in a dark alley. You've traded the seasonal grind of farming for the year-round, monotonous toil of the workshop. In some ways, your life is more secure. The city offers a buffer against the famines that plagued your village. But you have lost the last vestiges of community and belonging. You are just one more anonymous, enslaved face in a teeming, uncaring urban jungle. Your life in the grimy, chaotic city has become a predictable rhythm of toil and fear. But predictability is a luxury you can't afford. Your artisan master, perhaps hit by a downturn in the market for dyed cloth or simply offered a price he couldn't refuse, sells you once more. This time, your buyer isn't a local craftsman. He is a different breed of merchant, wealthier, harder-eyed, a man who deals in the most lucrative and dangerous commerce imaginable. You have been sold to a master of the trans-Saharan trade. You are about to leave the world you know behind and step into the furnace. You are going to cross the desert. The caravan that assembles at the city's edge is unlike the small, regional one you saw before. That was a country lane. This is a superhighway of commerce. There are not dozens, but hundreds of camels, grunting and snarling as they are loaded with the immense wealth of West Africa. Some carry sacks of gold dust, the ultimate prize. Others are laden with ivory, ostrich feathers, and pungent spices. And then there is the other cargo, the one that makes your blood run cold. Long lines of enslaved people, men, women, and children, their necks often tethered to each other by long wooden poles, destined for the slave markets of North Africa and the Middle East. You are not part of this tragic column, not yet. Your new job is as a camelier's assistant, a low-level servant tasked with loading, prodding, and tending to the bad-tempered beasts that make this entire enterprise possible. The caravan is led not by a simple Madugu, but by Tuareg or Berber guides, the legendary blue men of the desert, their faces obscured by indigo veils that leave only their eyes visible. They are born to this environment. They know the desert's secrets, its moods, its dangers, and most importantly, the precise locations of the scattered, life-giving oases. Their knowledge is the only thing standing between the caravan and total annihilation. The first few days take you out of the familiar savanna and into the scrubland of the Sahel. The landscape becomes sparer, the trees smaller and thornier. Then, one day, you crest a sandy ridge and see it stretching before you. The Sahara. It is not just sand. It is a vast, silent, intimidating emptiness. It's an ocean of rock, gravel, and towering dunes, all shimmering under a sky so vast and empty it seems to press down on you. The scale of it is meant to crush the human spirit, and it does a very good job. The daily routine is a masterpiece of brutal efficiency. You wake in the freezing cold of the pre-dawn darkness, the temperature having plummeted from the previous day's highs. You help load the complaining camels, your fingers numb. The caravan starts moving as soon as there's enough light to see, and you walk, and walk, and walk. The sun, your old enemy from the fields, is a different kind of monster here. There is no shade, no trees, no clouds. It is a relentless, white-hot disk that beats down on you, reflecting off the sand with a blinding glare. You learn to wrap your head in cloth, not for modesty, but to prevent your brain from cooking inside your skull. Water is the only currency that matters. It is more precious than the gold dust locked in your master's chests. You are rationed a set amount each day, drawn from the foul-smelling water skins. It is never enough. It is warm, tastes of goat skin, and you dream of it constantly. Your lips crack, your tongue feels thick and swollen, and a constant, nagging thirst becomes the central fact of your existence. To spill water is a crime worthy of a severe beating. To be caught stealing it is a death sentence. The journey is a disorienting trance, a seemingly endless repetition of sand and sky. This is where you learn about a truly morbid and quirky form of navigation. The guides use the sun and stars, of course, but they also use grisly landmarks. You walk past the sun-bleached skeletons of camels, their bones half buried in the sand. And then, you see the human remains. A desiccated corpse, curled in the permanent shade of a rocky outcrop. A scattering of bones picked clean by vultures and bleached by the sun. These are the markers of past caravans that failed, victims of a sandstorm, a broken water container, or a lost guide. They are horrifying, but they are also reassuring. They are proof that you are still on the path. This is skeleton navigation, the desert's own cruel but effective GPS system. This brings us to a major scholarly debate. For centuries, the story of the trans-Saharan trade has been centered on two commodities: salt flowing south and gold flowing north. But many modern historians now argue that the trade in enslaved human beings was not just a part of this network, but was potentially its most significant and foundational element in terms of sheer numbers. They contend that the demand for soldiers, servants, and laborers in the North African states was immense. As you walk beside the miserable column of captives, watching them stumble, their faces blank with despair, you are a witness to the brutal reality that fuels this debate. You see more human cargo than gold cargo. Days turn into weeks. The desert's cruelty is not just monotonous, it is creative. A sandstorm can rise up in minutes, a terrifying, suffocating wall of brown that reduces visibility to zero and scours your skin raw. The only thing to do is crouch low beside a camel, cover your head, and pray the wind doesn't bury you alive. The landscape can be deceptive, a shimmering mirage promising water where there is only more sun-baked rock. One wrong turn by a guide, one miscalculation, could doom hundreds of people. Your job is endless toil. You prod the camels to keep them moving. You adjust their loads. You feed them their ration of dates and grain. At night, you unload them, tether them, and collapse, too tired to even dream. You are becoming as gaunt and weathered as the landscape around you. You've traded the familiar city grime for a permanent coating of fine sand that gets into your eyes, your food, and your lungs. It's the worst exfoliating treatment imaginable. Just when you think you cannot take another step, that you will simply lie down and let the desert claim you, the guide spotted on the horizon. A smudge of green, an oasis. The energy of the caravan surges. The pace quickens. The arrival at an oasis is a scene of pure, chaotic relief. You rush towards the well, pushing and shoving for a place to drink your fill of fresh, life-giving water. You wash the sand from your skin. You rest in the shade of a date palm. For a day or two, you feel almost human again. But the respite is brief. The water skins are refilled, the camels are reloaded, and the vast, silent sea of sand awaits you once more. You are only halfway there. The horrors of the route have tested you, but the desert is not finished with you yet. The desert has stripped you down to your essential self, a creature of thirst, hunger, and bone-deep weariness. The physical world has become an endless, repetitive nightmare. In this state of extreme deprivation, your mind turns inward and outward to the unseen world that has governed your life since birth. You are surrounded by sand and sky, but in your worldview, this emptiness is teeming with forces, entities, and wills that are far more powerful than any camel or merchant. You are walking through a landscape of demanding gods, and survival depends on knowing how to appease them. Let's say the caravan faces a crisis. The oasis you are depending on, the one the guides were certain of, is dry. The well is just a pit of sand. Panic, the most dangerous thing in the desert, flickers through the group like a spark in dry grass. The water skins are dangerously low. This is not a problem for merchants and cameleers. This is a problem for the gods. Your spiritual landscape is crowded. It's not a simple case of one god. There is, as you were taught in your village, a distant high god, a creator who set the world in motion and then largely stepped back, too vast and important to be bothered with the affairs of individual mortals. You don't really pray to him. It would be like a flea trying to get the attention of a giant. Instead, your daily fears and hopes are directed at the layer of power just below him, the spirits. There are the spirits of place, Every river, every mountain, every great baobab tree back home had its spirit, its genius loci. And this desert, you are certain, has its own. It is a vast, ancient, and cruel spirit, and your caravan has clearly offended it. Then there are the ancestors. Remember them? They are the spirits of your dead relatives, and they are not resting in peace. They are active, meddling presences in the lives of their descendants. They are like supernatural in-laws, constantly watching, judging, and demanding respect. You feel a pang of guilt, wondering if your own ancestors are angry that you have been taken so far from your homeland, unable to leave them the proper offerings at their graves. This belief system is a mainstream historical fact for much of medieval Africa. While outsiders, particularly Muslims and later Christians, often dismiss these beliefs as simple animism, they were in fact complex, hierarchical theological systems. Daily religious life was a constant negotiation with a pantheon of ancestors, nature deities, and functional spirits who were seen as the true arbiters of day-to-day fortune. Faced with the dry well, the caravan leader and the Tuareg guides turned to ritual. The Islamic members of the caravan, your master and the other merchants, unroll their prayer mats, face roughly towards Mecca, and perform their salat, their voices rising and falling in the hypnotic Arabic you first heard in the city. But this is not the only ritual. This is where you see the blending of faiths in real time. The head Tuareg guide, after his own prayers, walks away from the group. He finds a clear patch of sand, crouches, and begins to draw a complex series of lines and dots in the sand with his finger. This is a quirky, ancient, and deeply serious practice, geomancy, or sand divination. He is not praying. He is asking a question and reading the answer in the patterns. He is trying to interpret the will of the unseen to find water. It's a moment of pure magic, a practical appeal to a power older than the faith the merchants profess, and everyone, regardless of their belief, holds their breath waiting for his verdict. This blending fuels a major, ongoing scholarly debate. Historians still argue about the nature of religious conversion, particularly the spread of Islam in West Africa. Did it entirely replace the traditional religions it encountered? Or did a process of syncretism occur, where the new faith was layered over the old, creating unique, hybrid belief systems? What you are witnessing is the answer. It was both. Your master sincerely believes in the one God of Islam, but he also makes sure his men do not anger the Tuareg guides who know how to placate the jinns, the mischievous and often malevolent spirits of the desert, which the Quran itself acknowledges. It's a spiritual hedge betting, and it's the only sensible approach in a world this dangerous. As a slave, your own beliefs are a confused jumble. You remember the rituals of your village. You remember the healer from Section 5, shaking his rattle to drive out evil spirits. You remember the war medicine from Section 7, meant to make warriors invincible. And you have seen the power and wealth of the Muslim merchants in the city. You wear an amulet around your neck, perhaps the one the healer gave you years ago, a small pouch with a claw and some dried herbs. But you have also learned to mimic the words of Islamic prayer, hoping to cover all your bases. You will appeal to any god who might be listening. The diviner finishes his work. He announces that the spirits require an appeasement. A sacrifice is needed. The merchants grumble, a sacrifice costs money, but no one seriously argues. A healthy goat is selected from the small flock brought for food. It is led to a designated spot. Its throat is cut with a swift, practiced motion, and its blood is allowed to spill onto the thirsty sand, a direct offering to the spirit of the place. The meat will be cooked and shared among the entire caravan, a communal meal to seal the pact. You watch the ritual, the smell of blood sharp in the dry air. It is a raw, tangible transaction. It is not about faith in the abstract. It is about doing what is necessary. You have seen this your whole life. A chicken sacrificed to ensure a good harvest. A goat to cure a sick relative. An ox, in very dire circumstances, to end a drought. You live in a world where the spirits are hungry, and they must be fed. Their anger causes misfortune, and their satisfaction brings relief. It is a simple, terrifying economy of blood and favor. After the sacrifice and the meal, the guide who reads the sands points in a new direction. He claims the spirits have shown him an alternative water source, a small, hidden cistern in the rocks, half a day's march away. The caravan, its hope renewed by the ritual, turns to follow him. There is a new energy in the group. The act of doing something, of participating in a ritual that acknowledged and addressed the crisis, has restored a sense of control, however illusory. As you walk, you clutch the amulet at your neck. You think about the spirits of your ancestors, the spirit of this desert, the God of your master, the gems in the rocks. They are all real to you. They are not philosophical concepts. They are active agents in your world. They are the explanation for why a well is dry, why a man gets sick, why a raid succeeds or fails. Your life is a tightrope walk across a web of their whims and desires. And your only hope is to tread softly, leave the proper offerings, and pray you don't do anything to draw their attention. In the vast, silent desert, you have never felt less alone or more watched. The sacrifice at the dry oasis worked. Or maybe the guide just got his bearings. Either way, you found water, and the caravan, its faith in the unseen world reaffirmed, moves on. But the desert breeds a special kind of paranoia. In this closed, isolated world, where every man is a stranger and every bag of cargo holds a potential fortune, trust is a commodity more precious and scarcer than water. The crisis of nature is now replaced by a crisis of human greed. Someone has stolen something valuable, and you are about to get a terrifyingly intimate lesson in the justice system of your era. One evening, as the camp is being set up, a cry of outrage goes up from your master's tent. A small but heavy pouch is missing, the one containing the sample of gold dust he uses for small trades and bribes. Panic erupts. This is a serious crime. The caravan is a delicate ecosystem of mutual reliance, and a thief in the midst threatens the entire enterprise. The Tuareg guides and the caravan leader descend on your master's camp, their faces grim. There is no police force to call, no detective to investigate. There is only suspicion, and suspicion always flows downhill. The servants and slaves of your master's contingent are immediately rounded up. You find yourself standing in a line with a half-dozen other miserable souls, surrounded by armed and angry men. The merchants, your betters, are considered above suspicion. It must be one of you, the lowest of the low. Your protestations of innocence are meaningless. Your word is worthless. In this world, without evidence or witnesses, there is only one way to uncover the truth. You must ask the spirits to point out the guilty party. You are going to face a trial by ordeal. The legal philosophy here is quite simple and quite terrifying. It's believed that the human world is full of lies, but the spirit world is always true. Therefore, a physical test will be administered, and the gods or spirits, who know the secret in every man's heart, will intervene to protect the innocent and punish the guilty. This isn't unique to your caravan. Trial by ordeal was a mainstream feature of justice systems across the medieval world, from Europe to Africa to Asia. The methods varied, but the terrifying logic was always the same. The caravan leader, acting as judge, decides on the method. It won't be anything that permanently damages valuable property, that is, you, if you happen to be innocent. So the ordeal by fire or poison might be reserved for more serious crimes. Tonight, it will be something else, a quirky but no less frightening test. Let's say it is the ordeal of the hot knife. The caravan's blacksmith is summoned. A fire is stoked until it glows white-hot. A long, flat-bladed knife is placed in the coals until the tip of it shimmers with heat. While this is being prepared, the diviner, the same man who read the patterns in the sand, begins a solemn chant, calling on the spirits of justice to be present, to guide the heat of the blade, to make it burn the liar and pass harmlessly over the skin of the truthful. The atmosphere is thick with a mixture of religious awe and bloodthirsty anticipation. It's the most compelling reality television imaginable. You and the other suspects are forced to kneel in a line. Your heart is a frantic drum against your ribs. You frantically search your memory. Did you accidentally offend one of the merchants? Does one of the other slaves have a grudge against you? Guilt and innocence are irrelevant. The outcome of this ordeal could just as easily be determined by social dynamics as by divine intervention. Now comes the part that fuels a centuries-long scholarly debate. Historians still argue about the true function of these ordeals. Were they genuinely held by all parties to be an accurate conduit of divine will? Or were they a form of high-stakes psychological theater? The theory is that the sheer terror of the ordeal would be enough to force a confession from the truly guilty party, who would rather face a beating than risk the wrath of the spirits. It was a tool for resolving intractable disputes and restoring social harmony. For you, kneeling in the sand and watching the knife get hotter, this academic debate provides zero comfort. It feels very real and very hot. The first suspect, a young boy, is dragged forward. He is sobbing, pleading his innocence. The diviner holds his leg steady while the caravan leader takes the glowing knife from the fire. He says a final prayer and then swiftly, lightly, draws the flat of the hot blade across the boy's calf. The boy screams. A thin line of blistered, seared flesh appears on his skin. He is judged to be lying. Whether he stole the pouch or not is now a secondary question. The spirits have declared him false. He is dragged away to be beaten until he confesses, and you are one step closer. The legal genius of this system, if you can call it that, is its finality. There is no appeal. You cannot argue with a burn mark. To question the result of the ordeal is to question the spirits themselves, an act of blasphemy no one is willing to commit. Now it is your turn. Two guards pull you to your feet and force you before the diviner. You are trembling, not just from fear, but from a profound sense of injustice. You look around at the faces lit by the firelight, your master, the other merchants, the Tuareg guides. They are not looking at you as a person. They are looking at you as a variable in a spiritual equation. Your guilt or innocence will restore order to their world. Your fate is a matter of administrative convenience. You close your eyes as the diviner grabs your leg. You hear the sizzle of the knife on the previous suspect. You smell the acrid scent of burnt skin. You feel the intense heat of the blade as it nears your own flesh. This is it. A lifetime of hardship, of being a helpless pawn in other people's games, from the village raids to imperial conquest to this caravan, has all led to this moment of absurd, terrifying, non-rational judgment. The knife touches your skin. And in that searing, white-hot moment of pain, you find out what the spirits have decided is your truth. Whether you are burned or not, the trial serves its purpose. A culprit is identified, rightly or wrongly. The stolen property is, perhaps, recovered. The anger and suspicion of the group have been focused, purged, and resolved through ritual. Social harmony is restored. The caravan can now move on, its members reassured that justice of a kind has been done. You, nursing your burned leg or giddy with the relief of being spared, are just a piece of collateral damage in the relentless quest for order. The scar on your leg from the ordeal of the hot knife has healed into a puckered, angry-looking welt, a permanent souvenir of desert justice. It serves as a constant reminder of how your life is governed by forces beyond your control. After what feels like an eternity of sand and sky, the caravan finally crests one last dune, and you see something that makes no sense. It's not green like an oasis, but it's not brown like the desert. It is a shimmering, endless, deep blue line on the horizon. For the first time in your life, you are looking at the sea. You've made it. You have crossed the Sahara. But you have not reached a destination. You have merely arrived at the next stage of your commodification, and you are about to come under the cold, curious, and deeply biased gaze of the foreigner. The city you enter is a world away from the dusty, mud-brick urban center you left behind. The buildings here are made of pale stone, packed together in a confusing maze of alleys and courtyards. The air, instead of smelling of savanna dust and wood smoke, is thick with the strange, salty tang of the sea and the scent of olives and unfamiliar spices. The people are different. Their skin is lighter, their hair is different, and they speak a language, Arabic, that you only knew from the mouths of merchants. But here it is the river in which everyone swims. You have arrived in a port city on the Mediterranean coast of North Africa, a place like Tripoli or Tunis, a crossroads of empires. Your master guides his caravan, his camels, and his column of human property, including you, through the city gates. And you immediately feel it, the gaze. People stop and stare. You are an object of immense curiosity. Your dark skin, your features, the ritual scars on your cheeks from the village of your birth, the rough spun cloth of your garment. It all marks you as someone from the Bilad al-Sudan, the land of the blacks. You are an exotic specimen, a creature from the mysterious, half-mythical land south of the Great Desert. Their stares are not hostile, not exactly. They are appraising. It's the way a person looks at a strange animal or an interesting piece of pottery. It is the look that reduces you from a person to a thing. Your master takes you to a funduck. This is a quirky, but vital, institution of the medieval city. It's a combination inn, warehouse, and marketplace, a massive stone courtyard surrounded by rooms and stables. It's where long-distance traders like your master stay, store their goods, and conduct their business. It is a buzzing hub of international commerce. Here, for the first time, you see yet another type of foreigner, Europeans. They are likely merchants from Genoa or Venice, with pale skin that seems to burn in the sun, strange, close-fitting clothes, and their own incomprehensible languages. They have their own section of the funduck, and they look at you with the same detached curiosity as everyone else. You are put on the market. You and the other surviving slaves from the journey are cleaned up, oiled to make your skin shine, and put on display in the courtyard of the funduck, or perhaps in a dedicated slave market. Potential buyers walk past, prodding you, checking your teeth, inspecting your muscles, and asking your master about your origin and temperament. The burn on your leg from the ordeal might be a point of discussion. Is it a sign of rebelliousness or merely a feature of the barbaric justice of your homeland? You are a product, and your features are being discussed like the quality of a piece of cloth. This is where you become a living data point in a great historical debate. The men who are looking at you, the Arab geographers and the traveling European merchants, are the ones who will write the books that define Africa for the rest of the world for centuries to come. Historians still argue whether the accounts of writers like Ibn Battuta or Leo Africanus were genuine, objective ethnography, or deeply biased narratives that exoticized and demeaned the cultures they encountered. From your perspective, as one of these writers makes a note in a book about your presumed savage nature or childlike disposition, you know the truth. Their gaze is not neutral. It is the gaze of a self-proclaimed superior judging an inferior. They are not trying to understand your world. They are fitting you into a category in theirs, and that category is at the bottom. You are sold to a wealthy merchant, a man who lives in one of the large stone houses with a hidden central courtyard. Your life changes again. The labor is less physically brutal than farming or crossing the desert, but the psychological weight is heavier. You are a domestic servant. You sweep floors, polish brass lamps, and learn to navigate the complex etiquette of a wealthy Muslim household. You are taught enough of the local language to understand commands, but not enough to express complex thoughts. You are a tool that happens to be shaped like a human. The foreignness is absolute. The food is strange: flatbreads, olives, chickpeas, sweet dates, things you've never tasted. The religion is ever present in a way that is different from back home. You hear the call to prayer 5 times a day, every day. You learn the routines of your master's faith by observation, but you are not expected to be a part of it. You are a pagan, a heathen, a soul that is probably lost. Some masters might see it as their pious duty to convert you, but for many, your non-belief is simply another marker of your inferiority. You are profoundly lonely. In your home village, in the artisan's workshop, even on the caravan, you were among people from your part of the world. You shared a frame of reference. Here, you are utterly adrift. There are other sub-Saharan slaves in the city, but you are all scattered, isolated in your respective households, atoms of a shattered world. You might catch a glimpse of another person with your skin tone in the market and feel a powerful, painful jolt of recognition, a longing for a connection that you cannot have. The world you came from is a subject of constant, casual condescension. You might hear your master and his friends talking, discussing the land of the blacks as a place of primitive, naked people who live in mud huts and eat strange things, a land of gold and slaves, but not of civilization. They speak of your people as if you are all the same, a single, undifferentiated mass of savagery. They are describing a caricature of your home, and you are living proof of it in their eyes. The disruptive power of the foreigner's gaze is that it doesn't just observe. It creates a version of reality that serves its own purposes, and you are now trapped inside it. Years have passed in the stone house by the sea. You have grown older, your memories of the savannah and the desert blurring into a single, distant ache. Through some impossible twist of fate, perhaps your master's death and a clause in his will, perhaps a desperate escape during a city-wide fire, you find yourself free. Free, but still a foreigner, still penniless. Against all odds, you manage to attach yourself to a caravan heading south, working your passage as a servant, driven by a primal need to return to the world you were stolen from. After another grueling journey, you arrive back in the heart of West Africa, not in your old village, but in a bustling town within a powerful, stable kingdom. You are no longer a slave, but you are about to discover that there are prisons other than chains, and that freedom is meaningless when you are trapped by the circumstances of your birth, or in your case, the lack thereof. You have stumbled into a society that is ordered not just by wealth or power, but by blood, by lineage, by caste. You've finally escaped the misery of being someone's property, only to find yourself in a place where your career path, your social standing, and your choice of spouse were all decided for you centuries before you were born. It's a bit of a cosmic joke. You can't even fail on your own merits here. You're predisqualified by a family tree you don't even have. This is a world of rigid social layers. At the very top are the nobles, the Horon. They are the warriors and the rulers, the descendants of the original conquerors of the land. They carry themselves with an easy arrogance, and commoners show them a deference that borders on fear. Below them are the commoners, the free farmers who work the land. And below them, in a series of distinct and separate categories, are the artisan castes, the Nyamakala. This is a mainstream historical fact of many societies in the Sahel. It was a highly organized system where your profession was hereditary. If your father was a blacksmith, you would be a blacksmith. If he was a leather worker, so were you. There was no crossing these lines. As a stranger with no family, no lineage, and no craft, you exist outside this entire structure. You are a social ghost. You try to find work. You go to the farmers, offering your strong back, honed by years of labor. But they look at you with suspicion. You are not from a farming family. Who are your people? Where is your village? Your story of being captured, taken across the desert, and returning is so strange, so outside their experience, that it sounds like a lie. They have land rights passed down through generations. You have nothing. They will not accept you. You approach the artisans. You see the blacksmiths, a caste both feared and respected for their magical ability to transform earth into iron. You watch them work at their roaring forges, the rhythmic clang of their hammers shaping the world. They are a closed community. Their skills are secrets passed from father to son. Their wives are all daughters of other blacksmiths. They would never teach an outsider, let alone one with no name. You are not of their blood. You see the woodcarvers, the potters, the weavers. Each is its own hereditary group, its own clan. They live in their own quarters of the town. They marry amongst themselves, and they guard their professional identities with fierce jealousy. To them, you are a void, a person without a category, and it makes them deeply uncomfortable. This is where you encounter one of the most fascinating and ambiguous of all the castes, the griot, or jelly. The griot is a bard, a musician, an oral historian. He is the living library of the people. He knows every noble family's genealogy stretching back to the dawn of time. He knows every great battle, every heroic deed, every shameful secret. He has the power, through his songs and stories, to praise a man to greatness or ruin his reputation forever. He is a walking, talking repository of social and political power. One evening, you hear the sound of a kora, a beautiful 21-stringed harp, and a powerful voice singing the praises of a local lord. You are drawn to the sound. The griot is a charismatic figure, his words holding the entire courtyard captivated. You see the lord he is praising swell with pride and toss him a generous gift of cowrie shells. But later, you see how people give the griot a wide berth. They respect his power, but they also fear it. He is a master of words, which are seen as a powerful, dangerous magic. This is the quirky paradox of his caste. He is intimate with the most powerful people, yet he is also an outsider. Griots are often buried in separate cemeteries, as if their very essence is too potent, too dangerous, to be mixed with that of ordinary people even in death. This intricate social structure is the subject of a deep scholarly debate. Historians and anthropologists still argue whether these caste systems were a purely indigenous West African invention, a sophisticated way to organize labor and knowledge in a complex society, or if they were influenced by outside ideas, perhaps from the Berber and Arab societies of North Africa, where similar notions of hereditary status existed. As you struggle to find a place in this system, the question of its origin is less important than its brutal, everyday reality. Your lack of a place in this hierarchy means you are effectively invisible. You cannot marry. No respectable family, farmer or artisan, would ever allow their daughter to marry a man with no name, no history, no kin. To do so would be to pollute their bloodline, to bring shame upon their ancestors. Your only prospects would be among other outcasts, former slaves, refugees, people on the absolute margins. Your life becomes one of scrambling for the lowest level work. You can do the jobs no one else wants, the tasks that are not tied to a specific caste. You can carry water, haul garbage, guard merchandise for a traveling merchant. The same kind of unskilled, transient labor you've always known. You have your freedom, but it is the freedom to be poor and alone. You are free from a single master, but you are now enslaved by an entire social structure. You might even seek out a griot, hoping he can somehow help you. You tell him your story, a story that now sounds thin and unbelievable even to you. The griot listens, his eyes missing nothing. He might pity you, but he cannot help you. His power is in knowing and reciting the established lineages. He cannot invent one for you. In his world of perfect, memorized order, you are a missing piece, a blank space that cannot be filled. He might tell you that a man without ancestors is a tree without roots. He can only wither and blow away. And as you walk away from him, the weight of that truth settles upon you. You have survived slavery, disease, famine, and the great desert, only to be defeated by a system of social neatness that has no box for you to fit in. You are adrift in a sea of social rules you can't navigate, a ghost haunting the edges of a society that is no place for you. Your days are a monotonous cycle of menial tasks and social invisibility. You have freedom without purpose, life without belonging. But the rigid, predictable world of castes and hereditary nobles that has excluded you is more fragile than it looks. Order, you are about to learn, is a temporary condition. And in the chaos that is coming, a man with nothing to lose, a man like you, becomes a valuable commodity. The trouble starts as a rumor. The old king is weak or dead. His sons are squabbling over the succession. A provincial governor, a distant cousin of the royal line, has decided that his own blood is just as royal, and he has refused to send his tribute to the capital. He is an ambitious man, a man who finds the slow, ceremonial pace of court life tedious. He prefers the simple, direct logic of the sword. He is about to trade his title of governor for the more fitting one of warlord. His first move is to build an army loyal only to him. He can't rely on the traditional noble levies. Their loyalty is to the kingdom, to the system. So he builds a new force from the ground up. He recruits from the margins, disgraced nobles, runaway slaves, hot-blooded young men bored of farming, and rootless, stateless outcasts like you. He doesn't care about your lineage. He cares about the strength of your arm and the hardness of your heart. He offers something the structured society you've been living in never could: a chance. A chance for food, for spoils, for a grim kind of respect. Congratulations, you have a new job. The uniform is whatever you can loot, and the retirement plan is dying gloriously in battle. You join his growing band of marauders. For the first time since you were stolen from your village, you feel a sense of belonging. It is a twisted, terrifying belonging, a brotherhood of wolves, but it is better than the soul-crushing loneliness you have endured. You are given a spear, a rough-hide shield, and a place by the fire. You are no longer a social ghost. You are a soldier in the army of the rising strong men. The warlord's methods are brutal and effective. He does not engage in the formal, almost ritualistic warfare of noble armies. He practices total war. He sweeps through the territories loyal to the old king, not just defeating their armies but making a terrifying example of them. He burns villages that resist, seizes their grain stores to feed his own men, and executes local leaders publicly to inspire terror. He understands that fear is a more powerful tool for control than loyalty. You are a part of this terror. You are ordered to set fire to the hut of a farmer who looks just like the kin you barely remember. You are part of the shield wall that protects your new master as he watches his enemies beheaded. You take your share of the looted grain, the stolen cattle, the rough-spun cloth stripped from the dead. At first, a part of you is sickened. You remember being on the receiving end of this kind of violence. But you learn to smother that part of yourself. Empathy is a weakness you cannot afford. To hesitate is to be marked as unreliable, and the warlord has no use for unreliable men. So you do as you are told, and with every act of violence, you drift further from the person you once were. This period of chaotic violence is a common chapter in the history of the states of this era. A great kingdom like Ghana or Mali wasn't a single, stable entity forever. Its history was an accordion-like expansion and contraction. Central authority would break down, and ambitious strongmen would carve out their own fiefdoms from the decaying empire. Your new master is one such man, a product of the system's failure. He has his own elite unit, a personal guard of the toughest and most loyal killers. This is a quirky feature of many such armies. These men are bound to him by a personal oath. They might be distinguished by a specific, fearsome hairstyle, or by panther skins worn over their shoulders. There is inner circle, his enforcers, and his eventual successors. You watch them, a mixture of fear and aspiration in your heart. To be invited into that circle would be to achieve the highest status in this new world you inhabit. The rise of your warlord naturally fuels a scholarly debate. Historians still argue about the role of these figures. Were they simply parasites, agents of destruction who tore down functioning societies for their own selfish gain? Or were they, in their own brutal way, forces of change? Your warlord is destroying the old kingdom, yes, but he is also shattering the rigid caste system that had no place for you. He is creating a new, violent, and chaotic order where a man's worth is determined by his strength and his loyalty to the chief, not by his bloodline. For the nobles and artisans who have lost everything, he is a demon. For you, he is the only man who ever gave you a chance. The answer, you suspect, depends entirely on whether you are on the giving or receiving end of his sword. His power grows. He captures a major town, the one you have been living in. You march through the gates, no longer a beggar on the fringes, but as part of a conquering army. You see the fear in the eyes of the nobles who once looked through you, the artisans who would not speak to you. The world has been turned upside down. The griots, the keepers of the old lineages, now have a choice: flee, be silenced, or start composing new songs, epic poems about the glorious deeds of your warlord, inventing a noble ancestry for him to legitimize his bloody-minded ambition. Life under the warlord's reign is precarious and violent. There is no law but his will. Justice is swift, arbitrary, and usually fatal. A dispute is settled with a knife, not a council of elders. Your life is one of constant marching, punctuated by bursts of savage fighting and drunken celebration. You live better than you ever have before. You eat your fill of meat after a successful raid. You have a share of the loot. But you are always one battle, one misspoken word, away from death. You have traded the certainty of misery for the uncertainty of a violent, chaotic life. You are no longer a victim of the cruel realities of this medieval world. You have become an agent of them. You have found a place, a purpose, and a community. But as you stand over the smoking ruins of a village that would not submit to your master, a spear in your hand, and the cheers of your fellow marauders in your ears, you might feel a flicker of a long-forgotten emotion. A flicker of the boy who was stolen, the slave who was beaten, the outcast who was scorned. And you wonder if, in finding your place, you have lost yourself completely. Years pass under the reign of your warlord. His brutal, violent energy has become the new order. The old kingdom is a memory, and your master's emblem, perhaps a snarling leopard or a coiled serpent, is now stamped on the region. As a member of his army, you have enjoyed the spoils of this new dynasty. You have a full belly, a place of respect born of fear, and a sense of security in a world you helped conquer. But the foundation of your warlord's power, and of your own newfound stability, is built on a resource that is not infinite. It is built on the land itself. And the land is beginning to die. The collapse is not sudden. It's not a dramatic event. It is a slow, creeping sickness that you barely notice at first. The warlord's regime is one of consumption. His large, idle army needs to be fed constantly. The territories he conquered are squeezed dry, their grain reserves taken year after year to support his garrisons. There is no concept of letting a field lie fallow to regain its strength. There is only the demand for more. The farming villages, under pressure to produce, abandon the wise, sustainable practices of their ancestors, the intercropping, the careful rotation, and plant the same hungry crops in the same soil, year after year after year. You first notice the change in the bread. The millet porridge you eat daily seems thinner, grittier. The loaves are smaller. The harvests, which were once bountiful in this fertile river valley, diminish with each season. The heads of grain are not as plump, the stalks are shorter. The elders in the villages, the few who survive the conquests, shake their heads and mutter that the soil is tired. They are right. The earth is exhausted, its nutrients bled away to feed the warlord's endless appetite. Then you notice the trees. The warlord needed wood. He needed immense quantities of timber to build his fortifications, to construct his personal palace, and most of all, to fuel the forges of the blacksmiths who churned out the thousands of spears and arrowheads for his army. The forests near the towns have been shrinking. At first they were just thinned out, but now great patches of naked, scarred earth are visible. The cool, shaded groves where you once camped on campaign are gone. With the trees go the animals. The deer and antelope that were once plentiful have retreated to distant hills. Hunting, once a reliable source of meat for the army, becomes a difficult, fruitless endeavor. The disappearance of the trees has another, more subtle effect. The birds go silent. The morning air, once filled with a chorus of calls, is now eerily quiet. A quirky but telling sign of this ecological stress is that you start to see people digging into giant termite mounds. Not for the insects themselves, but to eat the clay, which is rich in minerals that the depleted soil and the meager food can no longer provide. It's a sign of profound nutritional desperation. This process of deforestation and soil exhaustion is a well-documented cause for the decline of historical states. The great stone enclosures of Great Zimbabwe, for instance, are believed to have been abandoned partly because the surrounding land, stripped of its resources by a large population, could no longer support its inhabitants. You are living through a similar, man-made catastrophe. The warlord's 5-year plan was all about conquest. He didn't have it not turning our kingdom into a desert subcommittee. A clear organizational oversight. Then, the sky turns against you. The familiar pattern of wet and dry seasons begins to fray. The rains, which were once reliable, become fickle. One year they are late and sparse. The next year, they might come in a furious, destructive torrent that washes away the weak topsoil, carving deep gullies into the exhausted fields. The year after that, they barely come at all. It feels like the drought you survived in your youth, back in Section 4. But this time it's different. This isn't just a temporary withholding of nature's bounty. This feels like a permanent judgment. The land itself is broken, and its ability to hold and use the water that does fall is crippled. This is where you find yourself in the middle of a classic scholarly debate. Historians and paleoclimatologists still argue about the primary cause of such historical collapses. Was it human-induced environmental destruction, or was it a natural, cyclical shift in the climate? The truth, as you are witnessing, is that it's a devastating partnership. A long-term drying trend in the climate might have been manageable for a healthy, resilient ecosystem. But your warlord's short-sighted, extractive policies have destroyed that resilience. Human foolishness has stripped the land of its armor, and now a natural climate shift is delivering the killing blow. The kingdom begins to rot from within. As the harvests fail, the warlord can no longer feed his army. The vast reserves of grain he built up from plunder are gone. The soldiers grow restless, their loyalty fraying as their bellies empty. Fights break out in the barracks over scraps of food. The warlord, whose only tool has ever been violence, can't fight a famine. He can't execute a drought. The villages, pushed past the point of endurance, begin to resist. They have no grain to give. When the tax collectors arrive, they are met with sullen defiance or outright rebellion. The warlord sends you and your comrades to make an example of a rebellious village, but you arrive to find it half abandoned, its people having fled into the wilderness, choosing to face the bandits and the lions rather than another season of starvation under your master's rule. The unity of your brotherhood of wolves dissolves. The warlord's most powerful commanders, seeing the center crumbling, begin to think of themselves. They quietly break away, taking their loyal troops with them, hoping to seize a more fertile valley for themselves, becoming smaller warlords in a dying land. The great territory your master carved out begins to fracture and disintegrate. You are left with a choice. Stay with your chief, whose power evaporates with every cloudless day, or strike out on your own, joining one of his defecting commanders, or simply becoming a bandit, preying on the weak in a land of desperate people. There is no good option. The world you helped build is turning to dust around you. The streams you drank from are choked with sand. The fields you marched across are barren. The forests you hid in are gone. The reign of the strong man was a brilliant, violent flash, but it was fueled by burning the very world he sought to rule. And now, you are left to choke on the ashes. The kingdom is a hollowed-out gourd, dried and ready to crack. Your warlord's power, once absolute, is now as thin and brittle as the dusty soil. His army, including you, is a collection of hungry, disillusioned men scattered across a dying land, fighting each other over the last few bony cattle. You have seen your world crumble from the inside out, a slow decay of blight and famine. You think you have witnessed the worst of it. But the final, killing blow will not come from within. It will come from across the great desert you once survived, a storm of men and new technology that will shatter your world forever. The first reports are dismissed as panicked ravings. Travelers stumbling out of the desert speak of a new kind of army marching south, an army from the Sultan of Morocco, far across the sea of sand. This is not just another caravan. It's an invasion force. Your warlord, what's left of them, scoffs at the idea. No army can cross the Sahara in force. He knows its horrors intimately. He is about to be proven catastrophically wrong. The invaders are not like any enemy you have ever faced. They are not a rival clan raiding for cattle, nor are they a competing warlord trying to seize territory. They are professionals, a disciplined, organized army with a single, devastating purpose: conquest. And they have brought a new kind of thunder with them. Your warlord, seeking to crush this threat and regain his authority, gathers what's left of his fractured army. You find yourself once more in the ranks, a spear in your hand, a hide shield on your arm. But the men around you are not the confident marauders who once conquered a kingdom. They are gaunt from hunger, their eyes filled with a weary fatalism. You march to meet the enemy in a broad, dusty plain, the designated battlefield. As the enemy army approaches, you see the differences immediately. They march in tight, orderly blocks, a terrifying cohesion you've never seen. They wear matching uniforms, which is a bizarre and unsettling sight. Your army is a mismatched rabble, but they are a legion of identical, implacable figures. A quirky but unnerving detail is their use of drums, not just for rhythm, but for signaling. A series of sharp beats rings out, and an entire wing of their army turns as one. It's a level of discipline that makes your collection of individuals look like a scattered herd. But the real shock comes when the battle begins. Your warlord, relying on the only tactic he knows, orders a full frontal charge. The nobles on their bony horses lead the way, and the foot soldiers, including you, surge forward with a great, howling war cry. It's the tactic that has won you 100 skirmishes. It is about to fail in the most spectacular way possible. The front rank of the enemy army doesn't brace with spears. They raise long, wooden and metal sticks to their shoulders. And then it happens. A deafening, rolling crack of thunder echoes across the plain, a sound louder and sharper than any storm. A thick cloud of greasy, acrid smoke erupts from their line, obscuring them from view. And all around you, men begin to fall. They don't have arrows in them. They don't have spears in their chests. They just drop to the ground, clutching at small, bloody holes in their bodies. Your charge falters, confusion turning to sheer, mind-numbing terror. This is not war. This is magic, a terrible, death-dealing sorcery. You have just met the arquebus, the firearm. This is the brutal historical reality that ended the great Songhai Empire in 1591. At the Battle of Tondabai, a smaller Moroccan army armed with gunpowder weapons completely annihilated a much larger Songhai force. You are now living through your own Tondabai. The spear, the weapon that has defined warfare in your world for 1,000 years, has just become obsolete in the space of a single afternoon. Your army breaks. There is no stopping it. The courage of the bravest warrior is useless when he can be killed from 100 paces away by an invisible force. The war horses, terrified by the noise, rear and bolt. The foot soldiers, you included, throw down their useless shields and spears and run for your lives. It is a complete and utter rout. The disciplined invaders don't even need to chase you. They simply stand their ground, reload their terrible weapons, and fire into the fleeing mob. This is the center of a great scholarly debate. Historians still argue whether the Moroccan invasion was successful purely because of their technological supremacy, or if the Songhai Empire was already so rotted by internal decay, civil wars, succession disputes, and a struggling economy, that it was a hollow giant, waiting to be pushed over. From your perspective, running for your life while men explode around you, the answer is clear. It's both. The invaders' guns are devastating, but your army was already a ghost, a starving, broken force leading a starving, broken kingdom. You didn't stand a chance. You escaped the battlefield, melting into the terrified, fleeing crowds. The warlord, your master, the man who once seemed like a god of war, is either dead on the field or is a fugitive just like you. His reign is over, ended not by a rival spear, but by a small lead ball fired from a metal tube. His era has been violently erased. The invaders march into the towns and cities unopposed. They are not here to rule in the old way, to simply collect tribute and leave the local structures in place. They are here to occupy, to garrison, to control the trade routes directly. They are a foreign power with foreign goals. They seize the gold trade, the salt trade, everything of value. The old world of feuding African kingdoms, of which you have seen every brutal facet, is over. A new, even more unbalanced relationship has been established, one between the colonizer and the colonized. You are once again a man with nothing, a survivor adrift in the wreckage of a civilization. But this time is different. It's not just a change of masters or a shift in power. The very rules of the world have been rewritten. The skills you learned, how to survive in the bush, how to fight with a spear, how to read the moods of a local chief, are now useless. Power no longer comes from strength of arm or size of army, but from a noisy, smoking stick. You have lived through the end of an age. The storm has passed, and in its wake, the world you knew is gone, leaving only the quiet of utter defeat. The smoke from the invaders' guns has cleared, but the world it revealed is a conquered one. The new masters, with their firearms and their foreign tongue, now rule from garrison towns. The old ways are gone. The warlord you served is a ghost, and his army, your brutal brotherhood, is scattered to the winds. You are old now. The fire in your belly that drove you to survive raid, famine, and war has dwindled to a low, weary ember. Your long, cruel journey through medieval Africa is finally approaching its unwritten end. You find your way to a small village in a forgotten valley, a place too poor and remote to be of interest to the new conquerors. Here, you live out your final years. Your back is bent, your hands are gnarled, and the map of your hard life is etched onto your face. You are a strange figure to the villagers. You are the old man with no kin, the one who speaks with a strange accent, mixing words from a dozen different languages picked up over a lifetime of displacement. You tell stories, sometimes, to the wide-eyed children, but your tales are too vast and too terrible for them to truly grasp. You talk about a village of your youth, a place with a specific baobab tree and the taste of your mother's porridge, but you can no longer clearly picture her face. You speak of being stolen, of the long march as a captive. You describe the great city of mud brick, the workshop, the constant noise. You try to explain the desert, the sheer scale of the emptiness, the sun, the thirst, the skeletons that mark the path. You talk of the sea, a body of water so large it held the sky, and of the stone city where you were a slave in a rich man's house. You speak of the warlord, the thrill of the charge, the terrible joy of plunder and belonging. And you speak of the thunder sticks, the smoke, and the day your world ended on the battlefield. The children listen, but to them it is just a story, no more real than a fable about a clever rabbit. The adults are polite but distant. Your life is an anomaly, a disruption to the steady, generational rhythm of their own existence. They have their ancestors, their land, their place. You are a piece of driftwood, washed up by a storm they can't comprehend. In your quiet moments, sitting in the sun outside a borrowed hut, the memories come unbidden, not as a story, but as sharp, sensory flashes. The feel of the hoe in your hands as a boy, the terror of the raid, the bite of the rope on your wrists, the taste of gritty water in the Sahara, the weight of the salt block on your head, the smell of the dye pits in the city, the roar of the warlord's charge, the crack of the first arquebus. It is a life of unimaginable hardship, a tapestry woven from every cruel thread of your era. You have been a farmer, a slave, a porter, a soldier, an outcast, a conqueror, and a fugitive. You have been everything and you have ended up as nothing. This is the ultimate, cruelest reality. Your entire existence, your epic struggle for survival, will be forgotten. This is a mainstream historical fact. The past is a vast ocean of silence, and the history we know is just the handful of seashells that happened to wash ashore. History is the story of kings, of empires, of great merchants, of the literate. It is not your story. No one wrote your name down. The Arab geographers who passed through your world were busy chronicling the trade in gold and the genealogies of kings. The European traders in the coastal cities saw you only as merchandise. The griot in the warlord's court sang only of his master's glory. There was a practice in some great empires called damnatio memoriae, the formal condemnation of memory, where a failed emperor's name would be chiseled off every monument. Your fate is a far more common, and perhaps more profound, form of erasure. You are not erased by malice, but by sheer, total indifference. Your joys, your terrors, your loves and your losses, the scar on your leg and the deeper scars on your soul, all of it will vanish when your last breath fades, leaving not a single ripple in the stream of time. This leads to one last, great scholarly question. Historians still argue whether it is truly possible to write the history of people like you, the nameless, silent majority of the past. Can we reconstruct a life from a shard of pottery, a change in pollen levels, the footprint of a forgotten hut? Or are we just telling stories to ourselves, projecting our own meanings onto a past that is forever beyond our grasp? You are the embodiment of that question. A life of immense, brutal, vivid experience is about to become an academic problem, and then, not even that. One evening, as the sun sets, painting the sky the color of a fading bruise, you lie down on your sleeping mat. You are tired. The long fight is over. You close your eyes. You think of the shade of the baobab tree from your first home. The journey is done. And now, your story, which was never truly yours, comes to a close. The narrative we have followed, this long and arduous path, fades into the quiet of this final resting place. The heat of the savannah, the biting wind of the desert, the din of the city, and the roar of battle all recede, leaving behind only a profound and immeasurable silence. The countless struggles, the small moments of relief, the overwhelming weight of a life lived against the grain of a harsh world, all dissolve now. They drift away like smoke from an extinguished fire, becoming part of the vast, unwritten history of the forgotten. The world moves on, oblivious. The memory of your footsteps is washed away by the next rain. The space you occupied is filled by the wind. And all is quiet. Let the imagery soften now, the sharp edges of this cruel reality blurring as you settle deeper into your own comfort, into the safety of your own time and your own bed. The sounds of the past grow faint, replaced by the gentle hum of the fan in your room, the distant, muffled sound of the modern world outside your window. Feel the solidness of the world around you, a world of comforts and certainties this traveler could never have imagined. Let the darkness behind your eyelids be a welcome blanket, a peaceful void, free from fear and struggle. There is no danger here. There is only rest. There is only the gentle pull of sleep, drawing you down into a quiet, well-deserved peace.